Okay, we're live.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Roll call.
Councilmember Bowman,
Present.
Councilmember Farrelletto, Councilmember Gullumbeck,
Here.
Councilmember Noakowski,
Here.
Council President Pridgen,
Here.
Majority Leader Rivera, President Pro Tem Scanlon,
Present.
Councilmember Wingo,
Present.
Councilmember Wyatt.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. It's been moved by Mr. Wyatt that the council would now resolve to the committee of the whole to begin consideration of the mayor's 2020-21 budget recommendations. Just for everyone who is on and who is on our Facebook Live, especially the public. Obviously, this is the first time that we have had to do budget deliberations virtually. But as you see, our first responders who are coming up first and who are in a room have socially distanced, and those who cannot, they actually have on PPEs. So this is another historic day actually in the city of Buffalo, if not around the world. And so we are now in our portion of the budget of the consideration in which we hear from department heads. And then we come back in a few days, a few weeks, to then have what are called workshops in which we really kind of drill down. So if it seems as if we are not drilling down into the hard numbers right now, that is because these are the hearings to hear from the department heads and for them to have an opportunity to address the council. And I believe, well, I don't believe, we see in front of us right now our police department, and we know we have our commissioner, so we begin with them if they have any opening statements or comments.
Good morning, council members.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity to come before you here, although I'm not there in person. I'm here to present my department budget. The last couple of months has been challenging and has caused us to reevaluate the whole entire operation of the department. COVID has taken a big toll on our members, but I am happy to say as of today, we are down to only 3 members who are currently positive for the COVID-19. 17 who are on administrative leave, and more importantly, 62 persons have recovered and returned to work. I am extremely proud of how well our officers are handling this situation. Every day they come to work and serve the citizens of our great city with pride and professionalism. From the very beginning of this epidemic, I directed my command staff to immediately procure personal protection equipment, including masks, gloves, gargles, face shields, hand sanitizer, pump spray, cleaning solutions like that. We have been very fortunate to receive hundreds of donations of cleaning supplies, food, and other items as outpour of support from the community. We have been deep cleaning our police stations as well as deep cleaning every police vehicle at least once a week. We will continue these efforts as long as necessary to ensure the healthy and safe of our police department. I am confident, working with my executive staff, that this budget will allow us to continue providing exceptional police service. Purchase addition police vehicles, continue maintaining our accreditation status, and offer the latest training to the men and women of our department. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else, or is it just you, Commissioner, that'll be speaking opening?
Just me.
All right, then we will open up for council. We are also joined by our controller, who is on live, and also by Commissioner Estridge from the administration, and several others. Thank you.
You want that? You want the save and reset option?
Chief of Staff, okay, thank you. All right, council members.
I'm sorry, Council President.
You weren't muted, so we could hear your conversation. Anything from any of the council members? All righty.
I have, Brian.
Okay, yeah, everybody, you got to speak right up because sometime I won't be able to see everyone. Is there anyone from any council member? Was it from Council Member Wyatt?
Yeah. I just had a question regarding overtime. What, do you know what percentage of overtime COVID has affected for this year for you, Commissioner?
This is Captain Ronaldo.
Okay.
COVID has had some impact on our overtime. However, we are still within the budget amount of overtime from this current year's fiscal budget. So it has not driven our overtime costs beyond what was budgeted. Because although it has caused some increase in overtime, there's been some savings in other areas.
Okay. What was your overtime number for last year? Well, the budgeted amount. What was the budgeted amount?
$9.7 million total for the department.
That was the adopted budget number?
I'm looking it up. Sorry, it's exactly $9,470,000.
$9,470,000. Okay. Now, is that contractual that they have to get overtime? Is that a contractual agreement?
The overtime, there's a couple of different caveats. There is contractual overtime to meet mandatory minimum staffing in locations. That's included for both sworn as well as civilian. Then there is grant reimbursed overtime. That is a series of federal grants as well as state grants that pay us to have it above and beyond baseline services performed. And then there is discretionary overtime for things such as case enhancement, call-ins, things of that nature that require a larger police presence in response to an emergent situation.
Is there any way you can give us a breakout of what that percentage is for those particular categories?
We'd have to work on that, but I'm sure we could.
Yeah, if you could get that to us, that I would appreciate it. I saw that you had a grant number. You were granted $1 million. What is that relating to? It's budgeted $1 million. I'm sorry, it's budgeted $1 million.
That's a collective dollar amount for all of the grants that the department receives, again, both from the federal and the state.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Bowman?
Just to follow up on that grant number, is there any risk of losing those potential grants in this situation that we're budgeting?
Not that we've been notified by our the company or the representatives for those grants. These are grants that have been in place for a number of years. They're very productive. They've paid extreme dividends in terms of criminal justice and reduction in some of our crimes. So we have a full-time grant staff. It consists of 2 people. They have been in touch with the administrators of those grants, and so far we've not received any information that has us concerned about losing those grants.
All right, thank you, Captain.
Anyone else? Council members? All right.
I have one question. I'm sorry I was late to the meeting. I don't know, this is the proposed budget and we're reliant on money that's really kind of an IOU. Has the police department, have they been asked to provide a contingency budget should things not work out?
We have not provided a contingency budget. We have looked at our operation as a whole, and if necessary, we could go back and look at that. But at this point, this is a baseline budget for us to continue providing police services. And we were able to reduce a couple $1 million out of our budget in order to abide by what we anticipate in terms of the city's finances. So at this time, this is kind of where the budget sits, but we are prepared if necessary, to go back to the drawing board.
Okay, thank you.
Council member?
I'm sorry, yes, Commissioner?
Commissioner Estrich. I just wanted to mention the police in working on their budget did reduce it about $3.5 million from the prior year. We had worked with many of the departments to ask them to keep their budget at current year or less. And they worked very well with us to accommodate that request. So the police department went down approximately 4% from the current year.
Thank you, Commissioner. If I could ask just real quick, where were the adjustments made to go down to 3% or the amount? And staff, I think we're frozen on Facebook. Somebody just take a quick look at that because I'm looking at a frozen screen on my other devices. Anyone from the department, if they're still with us?
Sure. So the adjustments came from a number of areas. We adjusted our court time budget based on anticipation with the pause order and the courts currently being closed. We were able to adjust some of our overtime as well. Unfortunately, we anticipate a drop in some of the summer events that take place, so there'll be less of a need for overtime for that. As well as we currently have a recruit class in that consists of 47 officers. So once that class graduates, which will be delayed, but those bodies will help to backfill for any overtime that we're incurring for minimum contractual manpower. And lastly, our retirements are at a very slow pace. We've only had 10 retirements so far this year, and we do not anticipate a high number of retirements this year, considering over the last 3 years, we have had over 300 members that did retire. So we do have a younger department, and we expect to see less attrition.
Thank you. And I really asked that question and you answered it as I was hoping, in a way that I want to make sure that the public who is watching knew that the cuts will not in any way affect public safety, the police that are on the street, and our normal staffing for police. So thank you. Council members, any other questions? Thank you. I'm looking around. I think I see everybody. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you to our police force who is out there every day during this pandemic and often are faced with some very challenging situations. Stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I think next we have fire. I think I saw them getting ready. As a matter of fact, our commissioner is on. He's changed his PPE to something like 3 times. So we're glad that you are with us, Commissioner.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll turn it right over to you. And if staff can get the next department online, maybe take their video, not push their video forward until it's time for. All right, Commissioner, it is in your hands.
All right, good morning. Thank you. I'm here with Deputy Suarez and Deputy Barrett. Deputy Eason is on another conference call. So good morning. Thank you, everyone. I want to talk about our proposed budget. And let me start by saying it will go a long way towards alleviating the concerns and anxiety our firefighters are associated with this unprecedented struggle against COVID-19 and the existing pandemic. So this current budget, or the budget that we submitted, will allow us to continue to protect the force against the threat of furloughs, other personnel cutbacks. And it's important to remember that thus far, through the very height of the crisis, we've been able to go on and provide services without any interruption or reduction in any services to the citizens of Buffalo. And we've accomplished this by mitigating any concerns centered on our personal protective equipment, our PPE, questions like, do we have it in sufficient quantities and quality? Are we going to continue to get it without interruption? We're talking about masks, gloves, gowns, goggles, disinfectants, thermometers, Tyvek suits, just to mention some of our priorities, or our top priorities in this fight against COVID-19. So it'll also provide us with the a requisite amount of turnout gear, which is different from the other PPE I mentioned. We're talking about helmets, gloves, boots, coats, bunker pants, and to replace our worn and damaged equipment and to supply our recruit class. We have currently have 50 recruits in training. Actually, the training has been suspended temporarily, but we hope to get that resumed soon. So each recruit gets 2 sets of turnout gear. So that means 100 sets. So that's included in this budget as well. It also allows us to replace and enhance all of our worn, obsolete, and broken equipment, which will enhance our efficiency and effectiveness as well. We'll provide fleet maintenance by budgeting for the repair and replacement of our several of our aging Jeep vehicles as well. And just as important, it will ensure contracts are in place to ensure the continued deep cleaning of our firehouses, steam cleaning of our apparatus, should this emergency continue for an extended period or duplicate itself at a later date. It will help us replace at least a portion of our self-contained breathing apparatus, our SCBAs. Currently, we're approaching the end of their life cycle. This is like $1 million purchase. So instead of getting all at once, we're doing it incrementally. And a portion of those are going to be purchased out of this budget, out of this proposed budget. We also allow for the extension and renewal of our medical director's contract. Very important. Dr. Bart, whose knowledge and experience has helped guide us through actually the most challenging time of this crisis, where we constantly developed and revised our COVID-19 protocols, our workforce monitoring, and helped us coordinate for our administrative leave personnel as well. All right, and this has resulted in a decline, a steady decline of people seeking administrative leave. That's what I have right now, pending any of your questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Council members, any questions?
Yeah, Council President.
Council Member Scanlon.
Commissioner, thank you. First of all, thank you for everything that you and the department are doing out there to combat this COVID crisis. So I know you guys are in harm's way every single day. So thank you for what you and your department is doing. It's greatly appreciated. I know not just by me, but people throughout the city of Buffalo. I just had one quick question for you on overtime for next year. There's a significant drop in the recommended amount for overtime. What strategies are going to be implemented to get that number down to that budgeted amount?
Well, we have several strategies. The basic strategy and the most effective strategy is the administration's commitment to fully staffing the fire department. So we're almost at our ceiling. The 50 recruits that I spoke about earlier are going to restart training hopefully within the next several weeks. We'll have 50 more bodies hit the street, and that will get us right up above or bumping right up against the ceiling of our maximum budgeted allotted personnel. So it all starts with being fully staffed, which is what we will be. We also have, we're also very vigilant with our home confinement policy as far as monitoring people who are sick and are injured and are supposed to be home. And that keeps our numbers down there. And we feel between a combination of being fully staffed and fully enforcing our existing rules and regulations that will be maybe not at that, but we'll be near that number. We've also taken steps for all of our day workers, day trippers, we call them, and our other ancillary departments, our fire prevention, fire investigation unit, special operations, hazmat, where they typically worked 4 10-hour days and then worked the 5th day overtime. We suspended that. So these are just some of the things we've done in an effort to reduce our overtime even further.
And just a follow up to that, the class that is currently in the academy, is that being paid for by that federal grant?
Yes, it is.
It is
fully paid for by the SAFER grant. 3 years salary and benefits for those 50 members.
Okay, and then finally, I know you're talking about fully staffing the fire department. The active list that's out there for recruits, how long is that good for? Do you know?
It's good for at least 2 more years, Councilman.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Commissioner, did you have anything you want to say on fire? I'm sorry, Esther, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
No, I know they've worked very hard though to lower their overtime, and we've been working with them, and it's been very grateful to see that they've been, pushing the reduction in overtime.
Thank you. The PPEs, and I know the mayor has increased, has put that line in the budget. Do you feel, either commissioner, that it is enough if this pandemic continues long-term?
I do. I mean, the administration, purchasing, Ms. Estrich, everyone, the whole administration has been terrific as far as monitoring our needs, asking what our needs are, reevaluating our burn rates at regular intervals to assure us that we have enough equipment in the pipeline for continued uninterrupted supply of our PPE. So I'm confident that that's happening.
Thank you. Commissioner Estrich, and then Councilmember Wyatt, I see his hand.
Sure, I'm sorry. We had put in approximately $2 million in services and supplies for the PPEs for the upcoming year. So we have a substantial amount funded for that.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Commissioner. Councilmember Wyatt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Donna, where are we exactly as far as the overtime number for fire right now?
Fire right now is approximately 6.7 department-wide, 6.7 million.
And what was budgeted last year?
They had $5.2 million.
That was the total, right?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any danger of us losing the federal grant? Is that
No, we had, because of the pause.
Yeah, well, pause with the federal. I think at some point the federal government is going to have some challenges with their funds as well. Is that a concern?
Not at this time. We had reached out to the grant, to the SAFER grant, to confirm that they would pay them during this pause, and they did confirm that, and they had no other comments that they would be closing it out or not continuing it at all.
Was there an analysis done with the changes, the concessions of the union last year as far as changing the hours for the firefighters? Is that helped us at all? Is that something that you have any analysis on it at this point?
We do have it. I don't have it with me right now, but we can get it for you.
Okay, can I please get that?
Sure.
Thank you.
And just a reminder to staff, like we did on last year, any of the requests from council members, please compile that so that when we get to workshops, we have all of those pieces.
Thank you.
Any other council members? I'm scanning. Councilmember Bowman.
Thank you, Council President. To follow up on Councilmember Wyatt's, with Donna, Commissioner, could you also provide to see if dynamic staffing, if that, any numbers to show if that has quelled overtime or led to a reduction in overtime as well?
Certainly. Yeah, we depend on the dynamic staffing to help lower overtime. So yeah,
The numbers would be helpful. Thank you.
I can comment on that real quickly. I can tell you it saved to date, it saved over $700,000 in personnel costs. And Donna can give me those exact figures, Councilman.
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right, we'll have that for the workshops. Any other questions, council members? All righty. Well, seeing none, thank you, Commissioner. Again, and President Pro Temp said it already. I echo his words and this entire council to your wonderful staff who has really had to work in some really tough situations, and they keep getting up every day. So glad that those who did contract the virus, that most of them are back at work. And please stay safe. We need you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your support. Just real quickly, just to conclude, thank you very much for your support and the support of the administration. We think that this budget is realistic, it's strategic, it supports our goals and objectives, and it will definitely serve as a motivating tool to our firefighters, for our firefighters. So thank you all.
Thank you
Council
all.
President, just before the commissioner goes.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Ronaldo, I know the council member Bowman referenced the dynamic staffing policy and its reduction on overtime. My office gets a tremendous number of calls regarding the policy. And just moving forward, obviously, I'd like to have some conversations, and I know it's been agreed to contractually at this point, but moving forward, I would like to have some conversations about weighing those benefits of saving on that overtime number versus the health and well-being of the residents and the property of the city of Buffalo. So I just would like to have those conversations moving forward.
Of course, and myself and my staff are available anytime, Councilman, so thank you.
President Pro Tem, there wasn't anything that you needed particularly for workshops? Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Chief of Staff, next two departments are who?
Yes, next we have Department of Public Works, and they will be followed by HR.
All right, Department of Public Works is next. We are bringing them in. Our Commissioner Finn, I see him connecting to audio now. And so as the public is watching and as everybody's coming in, just another brief explanation, because this is probably the most people we've had watch us since we've been going Facebook Live and Zoom, is that we are in discussions with the department heads about the mayor's proposed budget for 2019 to 2020. Do we have the commissioner on now?
Yes, sir. We've got, well, Commissioner Finn's audio is still connecting. He looks good now. And you also have Deputy Commissioner Guzman.
All right, Commissioner Finn or whoever will be speaking, thank you. We can see you now. Commissioner, any statement for the council concerning the proposed budget of the mayor for your department?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm joined on the phone by key staff in Public Works, our Deputy Commissioner Henry Jackson for Streets and Sanitation, Susan Attridge, the Director of Refuse and Recycling, Andy Rabb, our Director of Parks and Recreation, Nolan Skipper, the Acting City Engineer, Francisco Guzman, the Deputy Commissioner of Buildings, and Jackie Barnett, our Acting Administrator. DPW has worked hard over the years to provide the essential services that are key for the health and safety of our residents. We've continued to do that, and this budget helps to support us doing that in the predicted COVID times. A big change that we're going to have in our operation is adjusting ourselves in all of our operations to keep our employees safe and healthy as we return things to normalcy. And there's funding in the budget to be able to sustain that. A couple other highlights that I wanted to make that are as part of our budget. The first being that we have reorganized some of the positions that are in the current budget to add a new title called the Director of Infrastructure and Quality of Life. And what that essentially is looking to do is to merge the operations of our street repair function with the mayor's impact team into a new quality of life focused team that follows through on some of the provisions we have in the current budget for staffing to specifically address potholes. What we felt was that structure wasn't ideal for what we wanted to ultimately accomplish. So we merged everything into one person, give them support, and send them at it. And then the second item that I wanted to highlight is the budget does not have the seasonal summer staff that we have for lifeguards. At this point, we're anticipating that pools are very likely not going to be able to reopen, and even if they are, it's not likely that that'll be for the entire summer. So we felt it was prudent to adjust that in the budget. That's my statement. I'll open up to any questions of the council.
You sound like that's my statement and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a long time since I've talked. This is a whole new world, man.
It is, and thank you for accommodating us this way and the public. Council members. Councilmember Nowakowski.
Hello, thank you, Mr. President. Hello, Commissioner Finn. As you know, a big thing in in the whole city of Buffalo and in my district is addressing infrastructure problems. So this, the creation of this new title, would you be able to empower that individual to address infrastructure needs, and would they be able to coordinate resources to alleviate and fix those situations?
That's exactly right, and that's the whole idea behind merging that into one title. As I've been speaking with my staff about how the different operations go, many of our operations in Public Works are seasonal. So staff who are working their butts off in pothole season aren't working or needing to work as hard in the summer or fall when the mayor's impact team is working hard addressing issues with overgrown lots or cut and cleans and board ups, which happen all year round. But by consolidating that into one operation, essentially, we'll be able to share resources and improve the ultimate responsiveness that we can provide to our residents and the quality of the work that we put out.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, council members. Councilmember Wyatt. Got to unmute.
Okay. Commissioner, do we have any contingency plan? Have we discussed any contingency plan if we don't get this 65 million from the federal government?
Yeah, so for Public Works, as I stated originally, we've worked on a very slim budget, and essentially, if those funds aren't provided, the slice of the pie that Public Works will have to endure in terms of cuts will be noticeable in terms of services that are lost. And just to give some examples of things that would be likely needing to be cut or adjusted, things like the 48-hour pothole guarantee. If we have to cut staff in the pothole crew, it's not likely that we'll be able to guarantee that level of service. Lot cutting would probably be something that would suffer. Right now, we're able to stay on top of it and keep it to a level that we think is pretty acceptable with our residents. That would not be able to be done to the level that we're doing it right now. Residential plowing would be another thing that would definitely see some suffering. Right now, our focus when we do our snow, I feel like a broken record, main, secondaries, residentials. But with the workforce that we have now, we're able to do that in a way that our residents feel comfortable with and is, I'll say, acceptable. I'd always like to do better, but if we have to cut, that'll become noticeably different. And, we'll be focusing on main residential's emergency access and getting that, I'm going to say, quality of life service to the residential streets would definitely see some suffering. And ultimately, if those funds aren't able to be provided, that'll have to be what's done. My hope is that is not the case, and that we're able to get the support and to be able to provide the services that I feel our residents deserve. So I'm hopeful, but if we have to get there, that'll be a conversation for that point.
But you don't have a written contingency or anything like that at this point?
We've developed plans. There's not something that's formal, I think, if that's the question that you're asking, because at this point, I think the focus is on maintaining the level of services that our residents deserve and that we don't want to backtrack from. But again, if we have to get to that point, we'll make the adjustments that are necessary based on what the budget is.
Thank you.
Council
Thank
President.
you. I'm sorry, who is that? I'm looking around.
Councilmember Rivera.
Councilmember Rivera, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And I think the question that Rashid Wyatt asked should be a question that we ask of every department that comes forward. I regret we didn't ask. I asked the police department if they had a contingency plan should things not materialize. And I understand there are things that are essential and services that are essential, and we don't want to cut to the bone. But it is possible, depending on the federal government, that we would have to make cuts at some point, sometime, because we won't have the money if they don't come through for us. And I think that is an option that we have to keep open. It's the responsible thing to do. So I think going forward, we should ask this same question of every department that comes before us. Do you have a contingency budget? What is essential? What is not essential? Public Works is a department that has many services and divisions that perform services that are essential, but we also have to look at things that might not fall under that category in terms of possible cuts if we don't get the funds that we're hoping. And I think every council member that's here wants and desires to make sure that we receive those funds. But the responsible thing to do at this point is to have a contingency plan within every department of city government, because to move forward and not have the funds in the future would put us deeper in a hole. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Majority Leader, we can ask staff to add that to the police department questions for workshops and to the fire.
Thank you.
And even if it's not, I mean, obviously we don't know person by person, but percentages, you know, we'd have to cut this percentage in personnel, this percentage in supplies, whatever it is that we are able to see something.
Yes.
Council President.
Council Member Scanlon, and then President Pro Tem Scanlon, then Council Member Wingo.
Yeah, this might be a question for Commissioner Estrich. We're referencing contingency plans and things of that nature, but if we don't receive that funding, would our hole be so large that it's kind of at that point we would have to go the route of borrowing through the Fed and those expanded guidelines and things we talked about on the leadership call last week?
If we did not receive, I don't think it's reasonable to assume we will get nothing. We think we will get something from that. If we don't get the full 65 million, we do have the opportunity to deficit borrow. And that would either be through our normal process, or we would do it through the municipal lending facility that's come out. We have those options. We also, you know, as the mayor spoke about, if we come to the third option, it would be the draconian measures that you're talking about now.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Wingo.
Well, Councilmember Scanlon, President Pro Tem Scanlon actually really just addressed my concern. We do know that there's a disaster relief fund that we're all hopeful that the city of Buffalo will receive, but deficit borrowing would be the alternative. So my question is, how much of that would we be borrowing if we do have to deficit borrow? That question is for Commissioner Estrich.
We can borrow in a current year up to 5% of our budget. So it'd be approximately 25 million, 25.7.
Now, the follow-up question from that would be, after we deficit borrow about that $25 million, what would it look like? And again, of course, we're all optimistic that the federal government will give us this $65 million. But Commissioner Estrich, what would it look like then if we should have to go and deficit borrow and only receive 25 million? What would the cuts look like after that?
Well, if we cut down to what our current budget is now, that would be a $65 million we're looking from the federal disaster relief minus the 25 would leave us approximately a $40 million gap at that time.
All
if
right.
we are looking at, we may deficit borrow for the current year and see where we are at that point because of our deficit coming in right now at approximately 15 and a half million. We've reached out to the controller's office and they're starting to look at that. And that would provide probably an additional 10 or 15 for the current year also.
So regardless though, the 65 million, you're saying that would be enough for us to meet our budget?
With the what?
The 65 million from the federal government, would that be enough for us to meet our budget?
The 65 million?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. I'm turning my mic up so you can hear me. Okay, that's all I needed. Thank you. But if you don't get everything else, we will definitely be falling short.
Yes.
All right, thanks.
So Commissioner, and I know we talked about this, well, I'm not sure if you, on the leadership call, but we have the 65 million that, again, we're all fighting very hard to get from the federal government. What is the other amount, the casino funds? How much is that?
The casino funds are at 11 million. The state, once again, included it in their budget. And we know there's been ongoing talks recently. So we're a little more confident that they will come to a conclusion, but it was included in the state budget. So we did include it in ours.
And I think that's why it is even more important to make sure that we do have some type of contingency, something in place, some type of plan. If either one of these falls short, because if either one falls short, we've got a hole in the budget that's wider. Can we talk about this 25 million before we go to any other questions? The 25 million of deficit borrowing, how is that? What do the numbers look back when you have to pay it back, and how long is that term for payback?
Well, if we do it through the federal government, it's a 3-year payback. There is currently draft legislation that we hope the council and the council members will all support to amend the local finance laws, which would then, it's in Albany now, there's a draft legislation, and that would allow the amortization of those loans for over a 15-year payback.
But right now it's at 3, so we'd have to pay back, if that doesn't go through, we're paying back 25 million in 3 years.
Right, but due to the COVID effect it's had on all the municipalities, we're confident that legislation is going to go through.
Council members, any other council member? Councilmember Rivera, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Donna, I mean, the money we're seeking from the federal government is a 1-year fund or stimulus. So going forward into the future, our reliance on that money is not very reliable after 1 year. So we're looking at going forward, and I hate to, don't want to talk about what we're talking about today, but we're looking forward because this budget actually affects the future.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 1 year.
It's fixed for 1 year, correct.
So going into the future then, the out years, what effect is this going to have on the city budget? I know we're going to have to visit again next year, but $68 million that we won't be receiving next year that we're building into the budget this year.
Right, and many of the reasons that we have that hole is our sales tax is, we're projecting a 20% reduction in sales tax and a 20% reduction in our state aid. And that's approximately 55 million right there. So we believe that sales tax by January, February will be back full force again. So the following years, it will be back at where we are at the current level. State aid, we assumed, is going to increase approximately $10 million a year with the state coming back. So that's what's in the 4-year plan right now. So those were the biggest reductions that we had in our budget.
And I'm hopeful that, that money comes through for us in the out years because we definitely, I'm looking at the out years and I see a lot of problems with reliance on money that's not available to us right now. And I can't project into the future, but we're relying on the information you're providing us to base our decisions. So that's why we're asking these questions now, because later on we can always look back and say, hey, we were dependent, we were reliant on that.
Right.
And we're hoping that the state and the county comes through for us in the out years. I don't know what their financial situation is, and I know that state has a $13 billion deficit. The county is making cuts 20% across the board. So I'm hoping that they come back as well because it benefits the city of Buffalo.
Right. I think our future years will be similar to this year. It'll be very lean budgets with with not a lot of additional projects going on.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council members? Councilmember Nowakowski?
This question is more towards Commissioner Estridge. Commissioner, in April 3rd, about $12 million was in the CARES Act legislation that was announced by our congressman, and about 8.2 million of it is in block grant money. Is any of those funds being used for infrastructure?
Yes, they are. Yes, that's under our entitlement funds, and they are all being used for infrastructure. Some of the money was also for housing during the COVID incident.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other council members? Oh, Councilmember Wyatt, and just remind everybody, we're still in public works. We still have public works.
Oh, you know what? Let me skip that. I'm sorry. Let me continue with Public Works. I'm okay. I'm fine.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, Commissioner, we know you have to, thank God you don't have to go out and get the snow today, but we know we don't know what's about to happen. And on behalf of all of the council members, thank you to your crew. You know, we talk about the nurses, we talk about the doctors who are definitely doing a great job out there, but you know, a lot of people don't realize that when everyone else was hunkered down, our sanitation workers and others have been out on that street every single day, and other people from your department. So I'm cutting a lot the other day over at JFK, and they've been out there to keep our city safe and as sanitary as possible. So we just encourage those people who are littering, instead of keeping things until we could do big trash. I hope they're getting big fines, as they should, because they're putting neighborhoods in danger. But thank you, Commissioner, for everything that you and your entire staff are doing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I agree 100%. I could not be prouder of my entire staff from top to bottom. Everyone stepped up to provide the services that our citizens need during this tough time. But thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And we are now moving to HR, I believe.
Yes, Malcolm Earth, the Council Chief of Staff. We are now going to be joined by the Department of Human Resources, and will be followed by the Law Department at their conclusion.
All right, and will she be joined? I see Ms. Hurton Hill on. Is she going to join from phone, or will she be coming in with video?
It looks like a Zoom that should have video, but she has it turned off. She's also not on mute, so she should be able to answer for herself.
All right. Ah, there she is. There her staff is. If you want to introduce who's in the room, you can, or you can just open up. I know you're connecting the audio, so we'll give it a few seconds. But I see everybody has their PPE on in your office, of course. And so as soon as your audio connects and you are connected, and when you come off of mute, we will hear your openings, any statements that you have for the council.
I am here with Antoinette Palmer and Willie McLaughlin. Can you hear me?
Can hear you perfectly.
Okay. As we are all aware, we are facing challenging and uncharted times. This budget has been revised to reflect the challenges during the pandemic. This time has allowed the department to become creative and to work more cohesively, while allowing us to continue to offer all services. The HR team has worked tirelessly while working remotely. We have continued providing essential services at the same level as before our new norm. As an example of this, we have done open enrollment. This process will continue through May 15th. It has been interactive and conversational. Employees have the ability to communicate with their doctors through telemedicine, doctor on demand, in the comfort of their homes. Although exams have been postponed, there will be a time when they will be rescheduled, and our staff has embraced paperless transactions, corresponding with departments, employees, and the general public electronically.
Is that all?
Yep, that's it.
Thank you. Council members. Councilmember White, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Herndon Hill, I just saw on the budget where your health insurance for retired went up.
That is correct. Antoinette, Director of Compensation and Benefits, it did increase by $1.4 million due to negotiations and contracts with 282, Fire, and paying their Medicare costs at this time.
You said 1.4 million it increased?
Yes.
And that's for retired?
Yes, yes it is.
Okay. Is there an increase expected for active? For active?
No additional This increase is just for the retired population.
Okay. It's cost us more, or we had additional people retire?
It cost us more due to contract negotiations.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any other council members? All right. Well, we only have one question for you. Again, as I've been saying to all departments on behalf of this council, and especially in these really tough times, your department has stepped up. We're still getting our mail from your department. I'm not sure how you get it done, but I know I just got something from HR, and you're still moving in the direction that when we do have to fill a very important vacancy, that your department is still able to handle it. I haven't had one call that said that you all have not responded, but several calls that said, can we call them? And I said, yes. And then they called back and said they took care of us. So thank you to your department during this really rough time. Councilmember Wyatt?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Wyatt has a question.
Yeah, another question before the commissioner leaves. Commissioner, do you have a contingency plan for your department? Is if we don't get the 65 million? And secondly, if there's layoffs or recommended layoffs, how would your department, what would your role be in that?
Okay, the first question was, do we have a contingency plan? We have gone through our budget with a fine tooth comb. We really did look as much as we possibly could and made changes when we could. But if we do any more, it would be probably result in hurting our services or possibly having to get rid of, to lay off people. And what was your second question, sir?
If there's layoffs, what would your role be? Would human resources be involved in that?
Yes. Layoffs, I'll let Willie address that.
Well, by our contract, it would have to be by seniority. So, the person who hired would be the first person to be laid off. We would go in that order.
Oh, okay.
We would have to do this first.
You said you.
Yes, our department would have to make a seniority list, and we would have to abide by that if there are layoffs.
Okay. Thank you.
And, I'm sorry. Yep. Who is that?
Wingo.
Councilmember Wingo.
So, quick question just to follow up. Seniority trumps the whether or not the role is essential. How do we?
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. Yes, it would absolutely be by seniority, and in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement, everything would be by seniority.
All right, so potentially a person who is a deputy commissioner or senior role will be furloughed or laid off before a secretary who's been there 30 years, correct?
No, exempts did not figure into the.
Okay, all right, that's clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Add something on that?
Absolutely, Commissioner.
The title, if you're questioning about layoffs, the layoffs would be by title. You would request whatever title you're asking to lay off. So kind of the deputy commissioner probably would not be one that you're requesting to be laid off at that point.
So we will request, okay, so that's very, very clear. Thank you, Commissioner Esther. So that we will request, I won't be requesting any title to be laid off, but should a title be requested to be laid off, that it will go by seniority based off the titles.
Correct, and it may not be in the department who is requesting the layoff due to people being in temporary positions in other departments.
All right, thank you, Donna. That's very, very clear. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you and have a great day to all of you. And we'll see you soon. Stay safe. We are now preparing to go to Law Department. And as they are coming on, I just want to make sure, because the public is watching, I know you're hearing these conversations about contingency plans. At this point, the mayor's budget, proposed budget that is before us, does not have any layoffs. So I want to make sure that as the public is watching and maybe some of our employees, that these are discussions in case some monies did not come through, which are important discussions to have. Do we have someone on from law yet?
Yes, Council President, we've been joined by Corporation Counsel Tim Ball.
Corporation Counsel, there you are. You are crooked. Well, I should say you're sideways, but it doesn't matter because a good Corporation Counsel, whether you're sideways or straight up, we want your mind, not your video so much.
I think we want Corporation Counsel straight up.
Good
Was
point.
that intentional to call a lawyer crooked?
Counsel, Corporation Counsel, thank you for joining us, and you have the floor. Corporation Counsel, thank you for.
Can you hear me, Council President?
Yeah, we can hear you. The feedback I think we're getting is you must have a computer on that has the volume up also and your headset. So you're gonna get twice, but we can hear you.
That should be resolved now, I'm hoping.
Yes, it is, sir.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, you're live. And any statement for the council concerning your budget?
Our budget is pretty uneventful. It's a cut of 5.15% year in and year out from last year. Marked reductions in legal services reflecting our commitment to get rid of outside counsel. Other than that, things are pretty much status quo from our current situation. We have used the opportunity of the pandemic to transition a lot of our litigators to offensive litigation. So we're going to be ahead of the curve in terms of property damage claims and 207 claims that the city has an interest in recovering on, as well as surplus monies claims that go back a few years. So we're really emphasizing using this time period to bring revenues in that we can't necessarily bank on in the budget, but we want to be ahead of the curve instead of having everybody sit around and wait, really prime the pump, so to speak, so we're on top of all those things. So we have revenue coming in, and hopefully in the time of the pandemic when activity is right next to nothing, we'll recognize down the road significant savings in claims because car accidents aren't happening. Police officers aren't getting involved in incidents. People aren't out on the street tripping over cracks in sidewalks or potholes and those types of things. So we're hoping that we can both advance offensively to drive revenue and decrease the number of claims coming in just because the amount of human activity is down.
Thank you, Corporation Counsel. Council members, are there any questions or comments? Councilmember Wyatt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Hello, Tim. How you doing today?
Good, council member. It's good to see you.
Good to be seen. A couple of questions. The budget was given to us with, in my opinion, similar. It's unbalanced. We have about $76 million that we are hoping on to balance this budget. Is that allowed? I mean, is that allowed that a submission can be presented to us that unbalanced be proposed for passing?
As long as you have the capacity for deficit borrowing, I think you're fine. And that's allowed by state law. So if you recognize a deficit that can't be foreseen because of circumstances like a pandemic where your revenues kind of fall off the cliff, you can propose a budget like that because for at least the upcoming year that you're passing on, you're solid. Even if the aid doesn't come in, you could deficit borrow to fill that hole, or you can make other choices in terms of adjustments in manpower, et cetera. But since the deficit borrowing is of an amount that the city can borrow, it's not out of balance from a technical perspective.
Okay, but from what Donna just explained to us, that the max on that was about 25 million, 5% of our, is it 5% of our proposed budget? What is the 5% based on, Donna? I'm sorry, just
It
mixing up.
would be 5% of our budget.
Our
and
proposed
then-
budget?
Correct.
Okay.
So, and then we would, if we deficit borrow from this year, we would have additional money from the current year also.
Okay. Does the COVID-19, this is from our corporation council, allow us additional time to deliberate the budget beyond the 22nd?
It's interesting because the way the executive orders flow with respect to the pause order, there is an extension of time for any deadline that occurs within that time period. So basically you take March 19th when the pause went into effect and you count out the time between March 19th and whenever it comes back to give yourself additional time. In these types of situations, once you get up and running so that you're able to deliberate these things, the intention of the pause is to put some things on the back burner because you have more pressing priorities to deal with and to prevent you from going into harm's way to do things. So as long as you have the capacity to do the budget, I think you do it. But if there is a COVID-19 related situation where, say, the council can't meet and meetings can't take place and things can't happen because, let's say, we have another crisis on top of this that takes everybody's attention away, then I think you'd be justified in moving forward. But technically, you know, the pause orders are interpreted in many different ways, but the genesis of it is you're not going to be able to do everything because you're shut down and you're taking on this additional, I guess, stress or bucket of issues that is a pandemic. So certain things can wait without penalty.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other council members? Councilmember Rivera.
President Lembeck.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President. Back to Rashid Wyatt's last question regarding deficit borrowing. If we borrow $25 million, say we don't get the federal dollars that we're relying on in this budget, and we do deficit borrowing of $25 million, and we certify this budget with a $40 million budget gap, we're certifying a budget that on money that is an IOU that we really can't depend on. I don't know if that is responsible on our part, but you say we can actually vote on a budget, certify a budget using deficit borrowing, even when it's above the deficit borrowing, it's $40 million on top of that, that we can't rely on. I just want a legal opinion from you. Is that something we can certify? And legally, yes, we probably can. I'm not sure. But in terms of the Common Council's decision and prerogative to do that, that's another matter. But just to the legality of it, you're saying that we can't borrow, we can't do deficit borrowing, and the other $40 million that we're relying on that may not come through, we can still vote on that.
I think that there's probably some confusion in terms of the overlap between the fiscal years, because you have a situation where you're running a deficit for this year because the fourth quarter, the revenues dropped off the cliff because nobody could do anything. And then you have a situation in the next year where it's unclear how we're going to rebound and what those revenue lines are going to look like. But even under the grimmest forecast, between the 2 years of when you experienced the loss of revenue and you're recovering from the loss of revenue, you have enough borrowing capacity to come out at a balanced budget. So you're not doing anything improper by saying, I can fill this with deficit borrowing. Now, if you get to third quarter next year or you're leading up to third quarter next year and things aren't recovering and this gap keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, that's when you might have to amend the budget to say, okay, we're going to have to lay some people off or cut services or do something because we're forecasting something that we can't close. Right now, that's not the case. There seems to be momentum within the federal government to recognize that through no fault of our own, municipalities across the country are basically put on pause by decisions at higher levels, certainly for valid public health concerns, but this is beyond everyone's control. So you've got first the hope and anticipation that there'll be federal aid. If there's not federal aid, then you go to the next point, which is, okay, what does the revenue look like as we come back from this? And as you saw, Governor Cuomo said there's, 4 stages that we're going to come back. And if you're still projecting a deficit beyond your capacity to deficit borrow, you have to do something. And that's when you do an amended budget and say, okay, bring in all your contingency plans. I've heard the questions before about contingency plans. We have one that we would put into place if necessary. But what I've tried to do is position all of my people to be revenue generators from things that don't impact real people, because generally they're insurance companies and their claims out there that we can be more aggressive in pursuing, so that we're running on the surplus side of the equation with respect to the law department. I want to be in a position where if we're spending $3 million a year, we're bringing in more than $3 million in revenue, so that it doesn't make sense to lay anyone off. But if it comes down to it and it's a doom and gloom scenario, I know exactly what's going to happen if we have to.
Thank you. And I want to commend your department for the reduction in the expenditures for outside legal counsel. I've been proposing that for many years now, and we've seen it dwindle. I don't know how much your goal is to, what your goal is in terms of outside legal counsel, but certainly one day we'd like to see it get down to almost nothing. Thank you.
Yeah, right now we've actually gotten to the point where all of the kind of legacy litigation costs from outside counsel that I inherited from years past has closed. I think we have in the budget $360,000 for legal services. More than half of that is a payment to the PBA for the Emergency Legal Assistance Program that they administer, and Olmsted Parks Conservancy insurance premium. The rest of it is basically for depositions, mediations, court costs, those types of things. The only component that we haven't really gotten to the bottom of is with respect to IODs. We still rely on outside counsel to represent the city at IOD arbitrations, because they're very astute at putting in that medical evidence to make a determination as to whether or not someone else can come back from work. We do have John Hannibal in the wings in the labor group, who's also unlicensed but a medical doctor, and is kind of brushing up his skills on that front so that we can take that last vestige out and be just wholly self-sufficient in terms of the needs for the city.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gullumbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President. 2 comments. First, I guess with Donna, the question is, and that sort of deals with a couple of the comments that other people brought up. Many, many years ago, I remember when New York State was notorious for being months and months late in passing their budget, we would still be required by law by the 21st of May to approve or amend the mayor's budget. In those years, we had, I guess, arguably, we had to guesstimate what revenues were coming in. We had to guesstimate those revenues based on previous budgets, on New York State's ability in the past. I mean, if New York State would have given us $50 million and suddenly we would have expected 150 million, I think that would have raised red flags. However, because we anticipate that 97% of taxpayers will pay their taxes in the upcoming year, et cetera, we're able to use those numbers. So Donna, my question to you is that because of the information that we've been able to garner from our federal representatives, I'm assuming that's where that 70 million or so dollar figure, 50 to $70 million figure is coming from.
Yes, the mayor has been working with our congressman on that. And it's really a little less than what he has been saying that we should be getting.
Okay, so that's number one. Number two, Tim Ball, I have a question for you. There's been some discussion over the years, going back many, many years actually, about having an attorney that would work for the Buffalo Common Council. My question to you is that legally, if we had an attorney, what would their role actually be able to be? Would they be able to serve in the position that the Corporation Counsel does right now, officially at our council meetings, our council committee meetings, etc.? Or would that take a change in the city charter, which would kick in a referendum? Because I'm going to have some questions when we get to our council budget about having a lawyer on staff and what their duties would actually be. But Tim, if you could legally let me know what their duties could be as of right now, and would we be able to just simply make changes, or would it flip to referendum? Thank you.
Yeah, pursuant to Article 12, the Corporation Counsel, myself, and then assistant corporation counsels who work within the law department are counsel of record for the city. And that's for the mayor, the common council, and the comptroller's office. There's a little carve out within the local finance law where the comptroller's office is able to retain bond counsel outside of the purview of that setup. So since we're still counsel of record, we still represent the official obligation to prosecute and defend all actions against the city of Buffalo, offer official opinions on behalf of the Corporation Counsel's office and on behalf of the city of Buffalo as the chief legal officers. As this discussion has emerged about having counsel to the council, it seems like the most prudent thing to do, and this was actually done historically when I think Paul Wolf was an attorney who was also the chief of staff for the council, where you can have somebody who's a lawyer in a position that isn't identified as counsel. Read here, policy analyst, any of these other things where you could have an attorney-client relationship. They could provide you with legal advice on a matter without it being the official position of the city. So that person could work hand in hand with corporation counsel assigned to the council, because we ultimately have to sign off to make sure everything's in order, everything's done properly, everything's done in accordance with the city charter and code and all the rules and regulations across the state of New York. So if you wanted to have a new position that carried those types of responsibilities, I think that would be a charter change. If you wanted to add back responsibilities of someone who's a lawyer because the council wants to converse with someone on that end, organize things, those types of things in terms of, okay, here's a piece of draft legislation that I've drafted on behalf of the council members, Corporation Counsel, can you approve it as to form, re-review it and go through that process? I don't think there's any issue there. It just has to be a credential, and you can't call it counsel because the council idea, COUNSEL, it's very confusing. So counsel for the city is Corporation Counsel as it's set out in Article 12.
Okay, also another question is that, one of my concerns has always been the law of unintended consequences. Right now, for the sake of argument, if a council member was sued, I would assume that the Corporation Counsel, and I remember a couple of times I had lawsuits threatened against me for refusing permits, licenses, etc., that we would use Corporation Counsel. Once again, if we had our own counsel, would that suddenly change and it wouldn't be Corporation Counsel and the resources that are available there? Or would it be, our individual lawyer that would be working for the council? Or is this a whole can of worms? To me, it seems like it's a can of worms that we would be opening by doing this. And as much as I understand the rationale, for wanting our own counsel, for the city council, I also see, the problems that could arise and the unforeseen problems, that we're not even thinking about right now. What would be the relationship between a council that is the council members' council and the Corporation Counsel? If part of the reason is that we're asking for our own, it's because, we want it to be quote unquote independent of the mayor, but then we suddenly are going to be reliant upon them. I just have some very, very strong concerns, and I'll be raising them again when we talk about the council. If you could opine on that.
Yeah, I would just say, I think that you can have it both ways from the perspective of having someone who is an attorney advise you on things that the council wants to do, but counsel of record would still be the corporation counsel. So in the event that any board, commission, director, official, department of the city of Buffalo gets sued, corporation counsel ultimately handles that litigation. There's obviously a benefit to that because we have a team of litigators that do this stuff all day, every day. From the perspective of council prerogatives in terms of advancing legislation or policy initiatives, there can be a benefit to that. I just don't think it would be, as the charter is written right now, that same person who's walking into court to defend things. That being said, if you have back and forth with somebody who's a policy advisor who's a lawyer, and they kind of prime the pump for things that you want to do, because there's two layers of protection. You got one lawyer looking on the front end, and then you got them passing it over to corporation counsel to say, okay, does all of this make sense in terms of your understanding of the city charter code, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you can basically get legal opinion number one, official certification from the corporation counsel's office, and then when you act, know that you have the full force, power, weight of the law department to defend whatever decision you come to.
Mr. Chair.
I want to make sure that Councilmember Golombek is finished.
Yeah, one last question. So Tim, if we were to bring in our own lawyer for the council, and it would do the same role and the same job that the corporation counsel attorney does right now, is it your opinion that we would need to change the charter and that would have to go to referendum?
If you were to call that position counsel to the council and they took on those responsibilities, I think it would need a referendum. If you had someone in a title that wasn't counsel, that was providing guidance, and you made one of the qualifications that that person is a lawyer, I don't think you would need a charter change.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and you're right. That was how we got around it with Paul Wolf 12 years ago, 10 years ago, or whatever, was by having somebody on staff who was an attorney. And that was when we raised the salary for the corporation, for the chief of staff at that time. It was never written into the job specs or anything, but there was an understanding that we would have, people on, staff that were either budgetary or legal or so on. Thank you.
Councilmember Wingo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Corporation Counsel Ball, do you work for the mayor?
Serve at the pleasure of the mayor, but confirmed by the council, and work for the city of Buffalo with attorney-client relationships with all three.
So do you work specifically for any department, or do you work for the corporation of the city of Buffalo?
Represent the corporation within the law department.
All right. This individual who I guess is being proposed to work for the Common Council, will this be a duplication of services, basically doing what our current council staff already does under the chief of staff's direction regarding policy advising? And ask that question first.
I don't know if there'd be a redundancy. It would depend on the duties of this additional position. If you have something in mind that goes above and beyond what the chief of staff and council staff does, and beyond what corporation counsel assigned to the council does, then potentially.
Okay. Next question is, if this person is here to give us legal advice, what then happens to our current corporation counsel who's been assigned to the Common Council? What is the purpose of that individual still serving as our counsel with an S, COU and SEL, if we have our own attorney?
Well, I mean, there's obviously a broader responsibility from the law department, but still be counsel of record, still be approving as to form, still looking over all proposed legislation to make sure I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and it conforms with, the menu of statutes, laws, rules, and regulations that apply to any legislative action. So there'd probably be a redundancy there unless it's just sheer drafting on the front end to kind of lighten the load so that one is just reviewing as opposed to doing it from scratch.
So basically, we're paying two very high-priced individuals do the same job, essentially is what you're saying.
I mean, if there's a redundancy in the duties, then that would seem to be the conclusion.
Well, it sounds like there is a redundancy in the duties, if you ask me, because right now I'm concerned in adding a position of that nature, being where we are with this pandemic. I don't think that's very responsible at all for us to add another very, very, very high-priced position during this pandemic in the city of Buffalo. So I'm just concerned. What is the comptroller's opinion of adding another individual of this magnitude? And if we get this position with the comptroller, you already said that the comptroller is allowed bond counsel, but even though the comptroller is allowed bond counsel, will the comptroller then be able to hire and budget their own policy advisor or whatever type of name you want to give it, so that we can hire a person who is an attorney, who's not an attorney, but is giving us legal advice?
I think there was a question to the controller's office.
Either the corporation counsel can answer that, or comptroller Barbara Miller Williams can answer it. But my concern is if the common council should get their own attorney and have that privilege, what says or who says that the comptroller then at this point is not entitled to the same, exclusive type of attorney privilege in her office?
Council member, I can answer that. It wasn't a request of the controller. If the controller, just like in every budget deliberation, when they submit to the administration what their departments need, anybody could ask. You could ask for a podiatrist if you want to. Doesn't mean that's going to happen. At the end of the day, this was a request that came out of the council, not out of the controller's office. And so
I don't particularly remember having this conversation in depth about hiring an attorney for the city common council. I don't remember having that conversation, and quite honestly, I'm not very excited about it, especially during the pandemic when we're threatening to have to lay off people. Police and fire, they held the line. HR, they held the line. DPW is holding the line. Corporation Council will even reduce their budget by 5%. And the Common Council, we're going to increase with a $100,000 job. I don't see that happening. I don't think that this is the time for that.
I can talk about this for a minute so that we understand what the request is and why. Number one is that this is the Common Council, which is the legislative body of the city. So our job is basically the budget, oversee this portion, and also to make laws, or to dispose of laws, or to amend laws. Currently, and Corporation Council just explained, currently what the setup is. One of our council members may want to opine because the research has gone in, and I totally agree with him, the Corporation Council, that if there was a person that was added, that the Corporation Council will continue to represent the council in court. But let's be very clear here. And you asked the question, and this is of no disrespect because we have a great Corporation Council to the City Council. We have a great Corporation Council in Tim Ball. But at the end of the day, It is serving at the pleasure of the administration. And as the controller has a person that helps with bond counsel, the Common Council, and it went all the way back, and I think Councilmember Golombek shared it with us before, that this has not been the first time. And in the past, when it has come up, it was about who's the majority, who's the minority. It wasn't that there was never a need, that the legislative branch of the city of Buffalo has a council that must report to the Corporation Council and also receive the assignments. I think that as we get to the workshops and in these next 2 weeks, we have this discussion, but the reason for it, and especially, we talk about the current state of this pandemic, and the budget that's before us right now is not a budget that totally cut down or that is $50 million less. And at the end of the day, some of the savings, as people have told us thus far, have come from areas in which they looked at and said, we can do without that. My concern is that the legislative body of the city of Buffalo should have counsel. Now, this would not have to go to referendum if we did it indeed in the way that we just talked about. And as we heard, our Corporation Council just talked about reducing costs for outside attorneys. That puts more work on the inside attorneys. Our current way of doing things, and it just is the Corporation Council that serves our council is also the council for the planning board, I believe, also council for the zoning board of appeals, also I think sits on one other. So the laws that need to be written for the council or even advice, I think is very important, and several legal analysts feel that that's important, and it has happened across the country. I think Mitch had some research, Councilmember Nowakowski, I'm sorry, that showed how it was done in another city, and it was basically what Corporation Council said.
Yeah, well, that really didn't answer my question. But with that being said, what's the urgency for right now? I have not been convinced that this is something that we need right now. Why do we need this right now when Corporation Council has been serving in their capacity with no incident to date since I've been in Common Council, even before I've come to Common Council? Why now during the pandemic? And I don't mean to have the discussion now, but it came up and I was going to wait to talk about it. But, we can't be irresponsible going through this pandemic when we are facing the prospect of having to potentially lay people off, and we're adding a job, someone, that's going to cost the city over $100,000.
It's not up for vote right now. We're hearing the budget right now, hearing from the departments to see what their needs are. I think the last two discussions that this council has had, the question is why now? And I don't know if there's ever a time to right a ship. But what I do want to make sure is that the council is an independent body, especially when it comes to law, when it comes to what our major job is. And so there are different opinions. And as we go forward over these next 2 weeks, and as there will be some proposals that would not, at this point, have a referendum, and then we can flesh it out. And then we vote.
On the question, Council President?
Yes, sir.
I just add, historically, I referenced the Paul Wolf example as chief of staff. We also had a situation in the controller's office where they had taken a former common counsel to the council through the law department who became the city auditor. And the reality is, if you have an attorney on staff in any of these positions, we work it out and we get to the right answer for the city. So regardless of what you decide to do, the law department's there to make sure that we get to the right answer for the city.
Thanks, sir. Any other council members? Councilmember Wyatt?
Thank you, Council President. I absolutely support us looking at a Corporation Council for us to focus on our needs and our legislative things. Tim Ball is an excellent corporation counsel, absolutely. But he takes a great deal of his guidance from the mayor, who selects him, interviews him, we confirm him. But nothing against him. I just think that for us to have a body that can do the legislation and investigate and advise us is absolutely appropriate. I know another city that I lived in, there was a constant problem with the mayor and the corporation counsel and the council's counsel. They were one and the same. It's something that you have to work out. It's something that we've worked through, but I think we can be more efficient if we have someone that focuses directly on our legislative needs, because we are lawmakers. So I definitely support that. But to Corporation Counsel Tim Ball, I know we've been waiting for the accounts receivable listing. On the last conversation we had with Donna, that was something that was in the works. Are you currently working on that as well? And can you tell us what that number is currently?
We have been working on it with part of a group. It's basically the collections group. Halima Madyoun in the budget office is going over all of the old accounts receivable and those that are beyond the statute and are still active. I can't tell you with precision right now what the number is, because some lop off on the statute or are considered bad debt every day. But we've got to be somewhere between 10 and $15 million here in terms of receivables. And, you know, that's over a whole consortium of different accounts and different things that have happened over the years. And I know that we're going through it with a fine-tooth comb to see how much is legitimate and how much is just basically paper that we're not going to be able to collect.
Okay. Do you have a timetable when you'll have something for us on that? Because I know we've been waiting for some time for something to be proposed to us so that we can eliminate what we know that we're not going to collect and really have a firm number, because that's definitely in this point in time a number that we could definitely focus on to have some hopes that we can close some budget gaps with that number.
To give you some perspective on that, we had received the abatement list and then the overall list of what remained up in the law department for our review. I think somewhere between March 15th and March 18th. And then on March 19th, the world changed. But we've been trying to get back together as a group on the other side of this budget process so that we can hone in on that and get it to the council. But I would say that the brunt of the grunt work has been done.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other council members?
Council President.
Council President Pro Tem Scanlon.
Thank you, sir. I just have a question. You know, this debate about council to the council kind of seems to be bouncing back and forth. I think the initial conversation started as a desire to have someone independent of the administration. But then part of this conversation, it was just talking about having someone, a policy advisor, just to look over legislation and work with Corporation Counsel. As Tim Ball mentioned, a policy advisor or someone in that sort of title wouldn't be able to represent us in court. That's correct, right, Tim?
That's correct. They wouldn't be counsel of record for the city. That's through the Corporation Counsel's office.
So there's never been, in my opinion now, the more I think about this, you know, it started out as a need to be independent of the executive branch, but now talking more policy advisor. There's never really been anything that's precluded us from a counsel from hiring a lawyer in the past, whether it be the 2/3 of $1 million we used in salary, or now with the new budget, the $750,000 it would be. And I know this budget doesn't necessarily lay out anything as far as cuts, major cuts, layoffs, things of that nature, but the term contingency plan keeps getting thrown around this morning in all these conversations with the different departments. And I think it's become clear that if we were not to receive that federal aid, the contingency plan would include a combination of deficit borrowing and major cuts and or layoffs. So I have concerns about that being in limbo and that being a possibility and adding nearly $100,000 position to our salary line. So I do look forward to continuing to have this conversation.
And President Pro Temp, you're totally right. If we asking other people for contingency plans, but the contingency plans would be about our entire budget and being able to look at it. So we definitely agree. All righty. Hearing and seeing no other hands, Corporation Counsel, thank you. I think that you have heard, and I echo the words of my colleagues about the cuts in your office, about the efficiency. And I want to be very clear, we really like our representative. So this is not a reflection of our council. It is simply about the council having the ability to be able to deliberate if this goes forward. And again, this is all proposals. Everyone proposes, the mayor proposes, and this is part of what council members do. But it is a healthy discussion. If, for instance, the same way we didn't get the 65 million, if we didn't get the casino funds and all those things, we all look at where do we need to make changes in our budget. I just have a final question, if I see no other hands, and that is on the question about the deadline for this budget. And the reason I'm asking this is if, for instance, the 65 million is not decided before May, and we're moving forward without that, I know then we'd have to amend. But with the governor's order, and I think you answered this, I just didn't catch what that meant. With the governor's order, let's say, for instance, and before anybody gets on and say, well, I wouldn't vote for that, it's only a question. If we were to wait or needed to wait, if they were going to decide on the 23rd, does the governor's order allow us to go past that deadline?
I think if you explicitly stated that you're waiting as a result of the pause order and the unique circumstances right now, you would justifiably be able to go outside of that deadline, because it's not just, oh, we need more time because of typical budgetary activities. It's an extraordinary time. And I read the pause order as saying, let's give these bodies and these officials a lot of flexibility in terms of these deadlines, because everybody's dealing with something that none of us have dealt with before. So they're going to figure it out on their own. And if you can rationally describe, here's exactly why we took an extra couple days or an extra week, I don't think you'd have any problem succeeding in court if someone said, late budget, so we go to the default. That's my opinion.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for all you do. Thank you.
Okay. Council President, I'm glad to see you're doing well.
I am doing well. Thank you,
You're
sir.
looking
Glad
good.
to see you doing well. Thank you, sir.
All right.
All right, Chief of Staff, who do we have next?
Malcolm Murtha, Council Chief of Staff. We now have Community Services, and they will be followed by the Mayor and Executive Department, Strategic Planning.
All right, for some reason you went very large and not. That was my fault, and I'm talking with the mute on.
I'm sorry, what was that, Council President?
Can you give me the next two again? I'm sorry.
Yes, the next department is Community Services. They are on now with supporting staff trickling in, and they will be followed by the Mayor and Executive Department.
All right, Community Service, Commissioner. I'm not seeing them on. I see Damone Smith. Who's on for Community Services?
Otis Barker.
Commissioner, thank you for being on. And before you give your statement, let me thank you for the use of outside of JFK the other day and the great job that your staff and the police department did for the giveaway of the mask. You have the floor, sir.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My opening statement, the Department of Community Services and Recreational Programming is recognized as the human service arm of city government, where daily we're tasked with addressing the social needs of our residents of the city of Buffalo, and our mission is to invest and a network of community-based organizations and programs to enrich and complement the lives of the City of Buffalo residents with special focus on youth, seniors, and homeless. The divisions within the Department of Community Services include contract administration, senior services, disabled parking, youth services, recreational programming, the Commission on Citizen Rights and Community Relations, and workforce development. We manage an operating budget of $4,373,384 with a staff of 36 members. And I'd like to take a moment just to applaud the outstanding work that my Department of Contract Administration has been doing in the midst of this horrible pandemic, working with the county's Restoration Society and the Western New York Homeless Coalition, where services and shelter have been provided to our most vulnerable citizens who are homeless. And then, of course, to the PAL staff for the creative work that they're doing with our young people, along with the Division for Youth. And then, of course, Damone Smith over at BETC for helping 70 residents gain employment in the midst of the COVID-19. So, I'm just so proud of the work that we're doing with Little. We currently have 3 vacancies that are intended to be filled within the next fiscal year. And in some cases, we've already begun the interview process. This year, we're facing many challenges. However, we feel it's important to continue to provide essential educational and social services to our youth and our seniors. And as we continue to look for creative and more innovative ways to serve our residents, we certainly solicit the support of this honorable body. Historically, the Department of Community Services has been successful in meeting and exceeding our established goals annually, and we look forward to working with this body to meet the challenges ahead brought on by COVID-19 and continue to provide services for the residents of the City of Buffalo.
Thank you, Commissioner. Earlier, we had on the police commissioner who talked about some of their expenses going down because of a lot of the cancellations of the summer activities. Are we seeing most of the summer activities that need special permit being canceled?
We're seeing some canceled, but we're also making adjustments on the fly. We're doing more virtual work, and again, I want to commend the PAL for what they're doing with technology. So we're making the adjustments as needed.
And the reason I was asking that, because I know that for some special events, there's revenue producing for the City of Buffalo, especially when we talk about special events. Do you think you'll have a significant reduction in that area because of COVID-19?
No, it really doesn't affect my department. So we're pretty good with that.
All right, council members. Am I missing anybody? Councilmember White?
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, for all that you do. In light of our current financial situation, do you all have a contingency plan if we don't get this 65 million or 76 million?
Well, the mayor's already outlined the contingency plan. We're prepared to adjust as necessary.
You said the mayor's outlined what?
The contingencies.
Okay, so I'm talking about your department. What is the contingency for your department?
We are making our adjustments as needed, but we're not talking about anything like layoffs or anything like that. Our department budget is pretty thin as it is.
Okay.
So as I'm sure you already know.
I mean, because I know you just mentioned 3 additional staff persons. And I guess you must, or someone must give you some pretty good information that we're going to get this total 65 million. Because in my mind, I'm wondering if we should even be looking at a freeze because we don't know. I mean, we don't have any information. No one's given us any confidence that we're going to get the entire amount. We may get a portion of it. But I think that, we should be just, somewhat conservative until we see what those numbers look like. So I just asked the question, did you have a contingency of if we don't get it, what things are you going to do? Because I know that we want to continue to support our seniors and our community centers, but it's a whole different day now.
It is. It is. Everything is. This is uncharted territory for all of us. But again, we're going to make sure that we stay on task and make any adjustments that's needed amongst our staff.
So as far as, because Mayor Summer Youth is under you, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we're still looking to do our full complement of Mayor Summer Youth.
Going forward with it, yes.
What is that budget for Mayor Summer Youth?
Right now, it's $1,730,580.
Is that an increase over last year?
No, it's actually a decrease.
Okay, 1,000,007.
Yep.
And are you currently working on a plan for social distancing if we're going to do that regarding?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've already begun to survey the work sites that are still staying on to make sure that they also have a social distancing plan put together before we get them started.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for all you do, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Council members? Anyone else? Oh, all right. Am I missing somebody? Hearing no one else, Commissioner, you must be doing a yeoman's job.
We're trying.
And you actually are. And so thank you, as we have thanked every other department in this city for everything that your staff is doing. I think that is really commendable to hear about the jobs during COVID when so many people are being laid off, and that Damone Smith's office is still getting people to work. And that's so important right now. So thank you for everything you're doing.
All right. Thank you so much.
All righty. The next department, I believe, is administration. Am I correct, Chief of Staff?
Malcolm Murtha, Council Chief of Staff. Yes, the next department is the Merit Executive Department. We have been joined by Executive Director Brendan Mahaffey and Oswaldo Mestre.
All right. Thank you all for being on. Whoever is going to be presenting, welcome, and the floor is yours. Will that be, there he is.
Yeah, I'll get started. I don't see Oz yet, but I'm sure he is with us. But so quickly, the OSP budget is as it has been in prior years. I will bring your attention to two positions that are in there, but they are not affected by the city budget because they're going to be CDBG funded. One is focused on housing and housing strategy more broadly than we have typically done, which comes out of a reorganization that we were doing with the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency, and another also a principal planner for neighborhood engagement, which I think actually the council has talked about quite a bit. Again, both of those are funded exclusively with CDBG, so there is actually no impact on the city budget at this point in time. In terms of some of the revenues remain in a lot of our lines, but the real estate revenues are lower than they have been in the past. Part of that is because the INREM has been moved to another line because it's not something that's directly controlled by the Mayor's Office of Strategic Planning. So I think it's clear at that point by doing that. And then a lot of the capital assets have been sold, and there's a question mark regarding some of the projects that are out there right now. So that line is lower than it has been in the past. But otherwise, I think those are broadly the highlights that we have for the Mayor's Office of Strategic Planning, which is Division of Zoning and Planning, Division of Real Estate, and also the Division of Development. So that's the quick snapshot.
Was someone else going to speak before we go to the council members? Okay. Then one question is, we're talking about real estate. Now, you and I talked about this, that if you have those items that need to come to the council, because at one point we weren't doing the sale of property, but that is revenue generating, so that, this council is open to considering those revenues. Council members? I'm missing a page, so I got to move over to a page, I think. Councilmember Wyatt.
Yeah, Brendan, I saw that there was supposed to be a land transfer. I think it was $3 or $4 million. Is that under your shop?
I think that represents the revenue that was realized by in REM. We did not have a single land transfer for $3 or $4 million. So I think that's what that number is.
Okay. You talked about the 2 additional positions that you said is funded by CDBG. Are many of your positions funded by CDBG?
We have, there's going to be those 2, and there's one that's partially funded by CDBG, and then and a fourth, which is the HUD grants manager. So those are the positions that are funded by CDBG, or a portion of them are.
Okay. Are you concerned that with the pandemic and actually some of the issues regarding the federal government as far as funding? I mean, they're looking at they can borrow right now, but as far as going forward, do you see that there may be a possible impact down the road?
It might be down the road, but at this point in time, the funding has gone up again this year for CDBG. And there is also a special stimulus amount as well that's related to CDBG, which again will help to cover those positions. So for what I know right now, we'd be projecting out at least a year at this point in time, which obviously is difficult right now. But for right now, those CDBG lines are secure.
Okay. Is there a contingency plan for you in your department? If we don't
yes, sir, absolutely. There's been a lot of thought that's put into that. Again, the details I don't feel comfortable elaborating on this point in time. Obviously, the impact that it could have, but absolutely have been thinking through contingencies.
Question for Mr. Mestry, and I want to applaud you with 311. It's been a lifesaver to a lot of people, and they've been doing a terrific job in getting back to folks during this pandemic. So I want to applaud you and your team for what you've been doing there. As it deals with this opportunity, because I think that your office is now working remotely, and that seems to be working pretty good. And that's probably something that we definitely want. We wouldn't want to cut that back. How effective is this working for you with 311 working from remotely?
Thank you, Councilman and Council President. I wore my bow tie. I thought you were going to wear it, so I'll wear it for you. Thank you for the opportunity just to present. In terms of this budget, it is a sound budget, and I'm excited about the prospects that this will have for our office. As you know, our 311 call center, among other engagement type of activities, had to ramp up within 48 hours to respond to the needs of our residents. And I'm proud to say that our call center operators, our staff, Bob, and administration really gave us support to ramp up so that there was no interruption of services. We are taking city-related calls, COVID-19 related calls, and also calls that would normally come to Councilman's office. And so I'm excited about the opportunity that the mayor is moving into, doing a 60-40 plan, and also with technology and how that would affect us in terms of manpower, in terms of our investment in technology.
So of course you probably don't have any additions to your staffing, but the response and the percentage of people who are now calling, is that increased more dramatically through this pandemic?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're getting obviously more COVID related type of calls. Folks are calling, wanting to know information about employment or the social distancing, understanding more about parks and the trails. When Councilman's office were distributing masks, they were calling 311, and we wanted to make sure that they got information in terms of which council district. So we actually just got a call from the White House, and we had to dispatch that to the mayor's office. And so you want to have essential service in terms of 311, making it, connecting the dots. It is seasonal. So right now we're moving into our busiest call season. Everyone seems to think that winter is our busy season. Buffalo's a can-do city, we're good, but it's right around now where people are starting to get out and people starting to see things. And so we're moving into that season right now.
How will you move forward as far as the clean sweeps and that? I know you are a central part of doing that with the social distancing. you guys are already talking about how you do move forward with that?
We are having discussions. Obviously, all of the council people here have been a part of Clean Sweeps. You know, I think it is a great engagement initiative with residents. And so we and my staff and administration are just thinking about this whole idea of engagement as you are, you know, and how we do that. We understand the needs are still there. And so we may be doing a modified opportunity of Clean Sweep in terms of moving forward. There are still other activities that we're engaging with block clubs and neighborhood watches and just everybody here because we understand the engagement part. We all can agree Clean Sweep works, but in this environment of COVID, just rethinking that and having a very meaningful discussion about that is important.
Well, thank you again, and thank you for assisting me in a situation regarding the resident. I really appreciate how you escalated it and addressed it, and I think she was pretty satisfied that it was dealt with. But again, thank you for your involvement.
Prime example of someone who felt like they were aggrieved and they called 311. Our operators took that call and escalated that. We always are encouraging residents to do that, and then we can quantify if there's any particular issues. And so, Councilman, we are working through that with Commissioner Finn and the mayor's office. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, sir.
Any other council members?
Yeah, Council President.
President Pro Tem Scanlon.
Yeah, question for Brendan. Brendan, obviously we were undertaking a reorganization of Bureau prior to the virus hitting, and obviously the consultant that we were working with is down in New Orleans, who's also been heavily hit. Have there been conversations with them about how we'll proceed moving forward?
There have been quite a lot of conversations regarding that. And actually, I think their national experience has been very valuable at this point in time because it's not just how Buffalo is tackling these current circumstances, but they're seeing it across the country right now. So that is helping in terms of particular strategies we might pursue. And, you know, bottom line, it doesn't impact the reorg in terms of the fundamentals of it. The fundamentals stay the same, but there might be some changes, but nothing significant.
Okay, and any sort of timeline as far as reconvening that group who's been discussing or meeting with them virtually moving forward?
I think probably within the next, I'd say 2 weeks is probably fair enough to say that. Again, with the adjustments that we've all been making, a lot of stuff has been put on the back burner. Yeah. Conversations have continued, but I think we can start that again in probably about 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? All righty. Thank you so much, sir, and for your staff being on. And as we've said to every department, we're thankful for what you're doing, especially throughout this pandemic. Your staff, as a matter of fact, there was someone who was very vocal. I think someone sent me a copy of it about 311 and that, hey, they came out in 24 hours. Somebody came out in 24 hours. And I know we can't get to everybody in 24 hours, but it is refreshing when people do recognize that there are people out there who still have to go to work and that are at work and that we're responding, the administration is responding as quickly as possible. So thank you all for what you're doing.
Council President, we all in this together. So thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity to present to my colleague, Brendan, and to my staff with 311. I can't say enough for them. We're talking about essential staff and our law enforcement, but whether it be public works or our 311 workers, they are taking those calls, at least 300 or 400 calls a day, sometimes 500. So I want to say thank you to them and to the administration.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all.
Chief of Staff.
Our next department is permits and inspections, and they will be followed by administration and finance.
All right, are they already on the call?
I see a lot of staff from permits and inspections. I don't see the commissioner. Judy Porto and Lou Petrucci have joined us.
Okay, we're gonna get the commissioner on.
Yes, sir, we're checking on that now.
freezing.
Well, I don't need it right now, but this is good.
I gotta hang
Just so that Kevin knows your mic is not muted. Is Kevin yep.
Okay, take a seat.
Okay, Mr. Helfer, are you representing for permits and inspection? Now you're on mute.
That you guys are going pretty fast.
Okay, so who's representing permits and inspection? We didn't hear that. You're muted. Chief of Staff, who's representing permits and inspection?
I was told Commissioner Comerford was already in, but I don't see him right now. I only see staff from the department. I'm going to call
He
him.
will be with you in one moment. He just, if I was on Zoom. This is Pam Mix Rush, by the way, from Permits and Inspections. He'll be with you in one moment, please.
Come on. Have a seat. There you go.
Sorry, guys, I was on the dial and apparently it wasn't working.
It's all
Can you hear
right.
me?
Yes,
I don't
sir.
like showing my face, Council President.
You could have just called in, but we like to see your face. We like to see your
Yes,
expression.
I know. Anyway, our department will continue to provide the same services in 2020-21 as shutdown. We are exploring and planning to implement the mayor's 60-40 plan. And in addition, we're looking for ways to limit exposure to citizens who come in to get permits, file plans, etc. During this quarantine, our inspectors have addressed all 311 complaints. We've inspected essential ongoing projects and have done their paperwork. They have done their paperwork remotely. They have limited ticketing, and only in extreme cases are our inspectors levying any fines, where there's garbage on the street or in the right of way. We have seen a dramatic uptick in electric plan submission and web permits. And because of this, contractors and developers will be able to hit the ground running when the quarantine is lifted. The bottom line is that when we open back up, there will be changes in the way we all do business. We understand that. And with the public interaction, we know that initially we will be inundated with collection of fees, permits, licenses, etc. But because of our department personnel's due diligence during this shutdown, we definitely will be able to handle the workload. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Commissioner. I see you're winded, so I know that you ran in to
Hey,
get.
I had to run over to lose office.
That's not a problem. Council members. Councilmember Wyatt.
Thank you. Commissioner, again, thank you for all you do. I talk to your department more than probably any. Judy and Vince and Lou have been terrific. Again, don't ever let them go. Don't do anything with them.
I hope not.
We'll be in serious trouble, but they do an outstanding job. So thank you.
Thank you.
I know you just mentioned something about the mayor's 60-40 plan. Do you have a contingency plan if we don't get this 65 million?
Absolutely. We'll adjust whatever way we have to adjust. We'll handle any changes, whether in the aid or whatever. But we definitely have planned to continue. We won't suffer from any lack of funding.
Okay. Are there currently a number of things that are backed up that you're just waiting for approval from the governor to kind of move forward? Do you have a bunch of backups as far as things that need to be paid or things that are in the hopper right now?
Yeah, when we go back into business, I'm sure we're going to be inundated with people paying licenses, fees, things like that. But again, we're preparing to handle it. We'll be moving our clerks into the areas where we can collect the monies, because I think it's good news, but we're going to be inundated with a bunch of collections for money. Yeah, but we can handle it. Yes.
I noticed a small thing I want to ask Judy. I know we went through the deli store license. Are those things taken care of at this point as far as the payment?
Yeah. Go ahead, Lou.
Hi, Councilmember. How are you?
Hey, Lou.
Luke Trucy, Deputy Commissioner. We received your concerns and other council members' concerns regarding the specific delis, the food store operators that you had reached out about. Because we can't hold a hearing right now, we are holding those ones in abeyance
Okay.
So we're not taking any action at this point. The other ones that we had no objections, we just put through and issued the licenses.
Okay. Now, does the COVID, the COVID executive order, does that give them some type of benefits? Because I'm what I sent you, I'm willing to give them some benefits because of COVID. But is that something that they get automatically because of the executive order?
Yeah, I mean, everything's put on pause. It's pause New York. So we have things on pause right now. So that's why we said we're holding it in advance. It's just kind of a pause right now as we move forward. But yeah, we just want to be sensitive to the community's concerns and your concerns as well.
Thank you. Thank you again, both of you. You do a terrific job for us. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilman.
Any other council members? Just a question. This is on the price gouging legislation that the council passed at the beginning of this pandemic to ensure that licensed stores in the city of Buffalo wouldn't unduly raise prices. Have we gotten any complaints? Are we still investigating those if we have complaints?
We are investigating, yes, Council President. Have we ran into anything lately? We've run into 2 so far.
Oh, great. And those were, what do we do about those? Those were rectified?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lou.
We're going to get
I'm
you
sorry,
some more.
Mr. Council President. We had received 2 prior to the Common Council passing legislation. Those we referred to the State Attorney General's office because at the time they were the enforcement agency for those types of complaints. So they had asked us to, again, refer those matters to them.
So as we get them, we are still referring them. And I think the public should know that this council did pass legislation for price gouging. And that isn't just somebody has high prices, but that they change their prices from what they were before the pandemic. And unless they're able to prove, I know some of the stores are saying that their suppliers are raising prices on them. So if they were able to prove that or manifest or something, that's one thing. If they can't, that's when, am I correct, Commissioner? That's when it's kind of considered gouging.
That's correct, Council President. If they're gouging, we'll go after them. They do have to prove that that the prices have been raised on. That's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions, council members?
Commissioner, Council President.
President Pro Tem.
Thank you. I know Commissioner Comerford and Lou run a very tight ship down there, very fiscally sound ship, but do you think in this year's budget, even though it could be tight, we could get them a second chair?
I'm in Lou's office. I had to run over here. I might need an EKG after this.
We wouldn't want to
Yes, I have
consider having second chairs right now in the mix.
Yeah. Lou, you want to sneak a chair in there? I'm
Any
seeing
other
Lou's.
questions? Any other questions, council members? All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank all, please, on behalf of the council, can you please thank all of your staff who continue to work, who are answering those calls when we get it, who are still doing the necessary permits that need to be done at times. So thank you very much, and please pass that on from the Common Council.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to stress that this electronic plan review, thank God we had this in place because now everybody's using it. And we were having a tough time prodding people to completely use it. Now everybody's using it. So it will enable us to hit the ground running when everything starts up again. So it was really a godsend, I got to say. But thank you, Council President. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, sir. And to all your staff. Chief of Staff.
Malcolm Murtha, Council Chief of Staff, will now be joined by Commissioner Estrich, who is already on the call for Admin Finance.
And of course, the commissioner has been on the call the entire time. And I know some of the questions from some of the other departments went into your department. So thank you, council members, for holding some of those questions. And Commissioner, if you'd like to make a statement.
Sure, thank you very much. As the mayor had stated, this has been a very, very difficult budget to prepare. You know, our world has changed so much in just the last 6 weeks. And we know it's going to continue to change. You know, this budget's going to evolve over the next few weeks. We're going to continue to receive more updated information. And we want everyone to think of it as a fluid document right now and while we're receiving all this additional information. The budget is preserving our citizens and their services and the employment of the city workers right now. For my department, myself, I do want to thank We did a new budget. I think most of you might have noticed the book was prepared a little differently this year. And that was through our Deputy Finance Officer, Halima Majin, our Director of Administration, Jessica Brown, and our Associate Management Analyst, Ray Nosworthy. And I think they've done a great job kind of dressing up the budget and making it hopefully a little bit easier for everybody to look at and review. Director of Purchasing, William Sunderland, has worked very hard with all our departments in the last few weeks, procuring the emergency equipment and making sure everybody has what they need to run their departments. And Mike Seaman has been running treasury and making deposits on a daily, well, twice a week to keep the city running and the income coming in. So we're open for any questions.
Council members? All righty. There are no questions from the council members.
Mr. President.
Councilmember Gullumbeck.
Thank you. Donna, thank you very much for all the hard work that you do on the budget and the help that you've given throughout the years. I guess my question here is that this budget, it seems like it's similar to what we might have proposed had there not been a crisis over the past several months. And maybe I'm thinking out loud here a little bit, but the rationale, in my opinion, seems to be that the crisis, if you will, that comes down to the financial difficulties that we are seeing is not because necessarily of anything that we did, but because of the virus that's striking the country, the nation. If I recall correctly, back in January, we were anticipating a $3 to $5 roughly $1 million surplus, and that has suddenly turned around into a deficit. My assumption is that we did not make the draconian cuts like we did back in 03, 04 right now, because of our relationship with representatives from the federal government and the hope and anticipation that we're going to be able to get something from them. I guess the question then is that at what point do you think we would know if or when or what we're actually going to be getting from the federal government, or is that completely up in the air?
At this time, I do not have a date. I am hoping, the conversations have been, we will know where we are early in June.
Okay. Yeah, this is similar to my colleagues here that, New York State, when they used to never be able to do a budget on time, if you remember 15 years ago, they would go 100, 120, whatever days. There was a big joke on the news stations where they would be checking. And that would really put us in the city of Buffalo in a bind because we had to have the budget passed by May the 21st. We never knew exactly what we were getting from the state government. And that was always, was beyond our control. There was nothing we could do about it. Unfortunately, that's the same thing that appears to be happening here this year, but with the federal government. And we can only hope that the feds come through for us with this money because, once again, it's, I believe, I've been working with Donna and talking to people in finance, that our house was in reasonably good order up until this hit. And the money that changes, the fluidity of the situation that changes on a regular basis, it's always there, but the negative impact of it has been basically, and from what I've been able to piece together, because of this crisis, and it's not because of any mismanagement or any bloated budgets or anything like that. Thank you.
The biggest impact we've had this year is our sales tax, our parking revenues, because those have all been put on hold. And then we've also put in pause on interest and penalties. So another $1 million there. So the swing has been due to the COVID-19 impact.
Any other council members? Councilmember White?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of questions. But Donna, what did we use the 34.8 ban for? What was that money used for?
I'm sorry, what?
The $34.8 million ban? The
one The one we just sold recently?
Yeah.
That was for the prior year band that we refinanced and then a current year one.
Okay, but what do?
We did not bond for the full amount of our capital this year. We only did a partial.
Okay. Does that hinder us as far as the amount that we want to borrow, the deficit borrowing? Because we have this loan?
No, it's really better because we only borrowed 10 million on the current year capital as opposed to the 25 million.
Okay. The other thing I'm trying to figure out, because it's all this reporting about the deficit. The mayor said 15 million, the controller said 35 million. However, when I look at the cash flow statement as of to date, it's almost 50 million. What is the actual number?
Well, the controller was asked, I think the council had asked them, what is your position as of a certain point in time? And that's where the 35 million came in.
Mm-hmm.
So we have months, when you look at the cash flow, where it's projected that we do have a negative cash flow.
Right.
And in June, we received the state aid of approximately $98 million. And then that brings our cash flow, our amount at that point to approximately 38 million.
Because currently right now, well, we had a $10.8 million deficit in April. We have a $38.8 million deficit this month. And we're looking at, what is it, 20% or 30% cut in June. So instead of us getting 98 million, we're looking at 70.
We don't anticipate the state aid will be cut until the following year.
Okay, so you're anticipating us getting that?
The full 98 million, right.
So,
and those are projections once again. Through
okay.
We have cut back on, we have frozen some accounts so far this year. So we are really, our only spending right now is in response to the COVID emergency response.
Okay. So did we get the 43 million in March from the state aid?
Yes, we did.
Okay. So the new cash flow that we got still has a deficit for these 2 months.
Right, and that's through March, your cash flow you're looking at, I believe.
So why is it a difference between the 35 million and the 15 when actually it's almost 50 million? From the two differences that I see from the cash flow report that we just got, again, 10 million in April and then 38 million this month.
That's not a cumulative, it's month to month.
Okay.
So 10 million, it's not 10 plus 38.
Okay. So
at the end of 1 month, it's 10, the next month's at 38.
Okay. My next question is, when you average out the past 3 years in our revenue average is about 470 million, 75 million. But every year we budgeted 500 million, 508 million. Why are we forcing ourselves to get to a number that we've shown that we're not going to meet, that we haven't met?
Well, some of the revenue we've put in there are new items that we've been trying to do. The basis of our revenue is state aid and sales tax. So we're trying to create new revenues for the city to support themselves. So some of them have been successful and some have not been as successful as we had hoped.
Okay, because over the last 3 years, every number, we've never hit our budget number for our revenue. And it's always been, again, this, we're putting a number on a page and we've questioned some of those numbers, like our real estate number last year. We put 8 million on, I believe we brought in 4 or 5 million.
We put in, I believe it was 5 million for this year, 5 million.
No, for last year, we did 8 million.
Right.
And 4 million.
I'd have to double check on that.
Okay. But I see, I understand you're trying to create new revenues, but does that make sense when we're, again, where we are right now? It seems as though we have these deficits that come in. We don't have a smooth cash flow. And again, we have these numbers all over the place and we don't have a smooth track for revenue. So why are we still using a $500 million number, especially in this pandemic? We put a $519 million number when we already have internal issues as far as cash flow.
We did have a deficit a couple of years ago, a large one, and then the following year it was smaller. And last year we had a surplus. We are turning that. And remember, we had $1 million surplus when we closed out 18, 19.
Mhm.
So we're trying to, I mean, so it did work, whatever the new revenues are that we had put through. And we continue to try to grow the city, you know, make it economic strength for the city. And some of these services that we're providing, we need the funding for. Some of them bring in revenues. That's why we're trying new things.
Okay.
All the departments you've spoken to, we have reduced departments.
Yeah. I mean, I just think, don't you think that we need to do some right sizing because we have been running a deficit and we haven't met the numbers, our budgeted numbers? Because right now we continue to push a number out there that we know in some cases is almost experimental because we don't have a track record. You know, when I did budgeting, we took a track record of this is what we've been doing over the last 3 years, but it seems as though we put a number on a page and the data doesn't support that number.
Well, last year, I have to argue with you, we did reach that number. So we did have a surplus with our budget.
Okay, but that surplus was caused by the upspend from the state. That was not something natural. Again,
because
you know, and we're looking for numbers. And I don't want to debate you, Don. I'm just
Okay.
putting the facts out there. We're getting a spin up from the state, but in a normal situation, you would want your business to run based on your normal revenues. And we've been putting out here for the last couple of years the revenues from the casino money, and here we are putting it again, 11 million that we're anticipating. We were told last year we're pretty sure that we're going to get it. The year before that, somewhat confident. But again, we're putting a number on a page that kind of enhances the deficit from the 65 million we're expecting from the federal government. That puts us in an even deeper hole as far as making some adjustments. So I'm just trying to get an understanding.
Right, we're trying to serve the citizens of the city. We still need to provide services, our snow plowing, our police and fire. I mean, we're trying to reduce it. We've reduced our revenue projections this year in departmentals to what our historical have been. We had some new ones last year that did not work out. We did remove those, but we do want to keep our employees working right now and our citizens with the services they expect. So if you're asking us to cut the budget by 60 million, it's impossible.
Yeah, and that's what I understand. But how realistic is it for us to say put all of our eggs in a basket? The federal government fund what the president's been saying that he doesn't want to fund us, and so we can't really expect 65 million. So at some point, the 65 million is a number that's going to be less, and then we always have to compound it with the $11 million number that we have to make some decisions on, and that's in a short time period.
And the $65 million, if that's reduced, then we would do the borrowing and do a portion.
Okay.
I still believe that we will receive some federal aid, disaster aid. Just because of the world it is right now. So then we would have to do some, if it's not the full 65, we would have to do some borrowing, yes.
Donna, can you just talk a little bit about, I know the mayor has frozen the taxes, the levy.
We froze the tax levy.
Okay. Now explain that to me. Why did we do that?
Well, by freezing the tax levy, that provided a lower tax rate for the property owners. And because of the reval, this will help hold the property tax payments approximately the same as they've had prior to the reval.
Okay. What were we anticipating with the reval as far as revenue before this?
Well, the reval does not have anything to do with what we anticipate. It's the levy, what we want to grow the levy by.
What were we anticipating from the new levy, from the reval?
Well, in what way? We didn't increase the levy.
The reevaluation is calling for a new number as far as your property taxes, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Was there another number that we were going to get for that from that reevaluation?
Well, no, the assessed value times the tax rate equals your tax levy.
Okay.
So now that the tax rate is lower and your assessed value was increased, you will pay approximately the same amount in your property taxes.
Okay, so we weren't going to see an increase in taxes this year?
Correct.
Okay. Are we still sending out tax bills in July?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Donna, for everything.
Thank you. Any other council member? Councilmember, I think Noakowski is trying to get in, and then Councilmember Farrelletto, was that your hand up or just scratching your head? All right, Councilmember Noakowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just Commissioner Estridge, as a rookie, I just have a few questions just so I know how to read this a little bit better. Under page 6 of the budget, under interfund transfers, it says this year there's 14.2 million. My question is, what does that mean? And why is it almost $1 million more than last year?
Those are transfers into the city of Buffalo. So we receive payments from the sewer authority, the water authority, and the parking board.
Okay, thank you. And then the next is on page 13. It has a little asterisk that says includes 3.8 million of board stabilization reserve fund. What is that?
That would be through the Board of Ed.
Okay. That is my only questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Farrelletto, you have the floor.
Yes, thanks, Commissioner. I just have a couple questions about potential borrowing. I saw something, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, that the Federal Reserve was extending borrowing to municipalities. I think it was to cities over 250,000 and counties over 1 million. When you talk about potentially borrowing funds, would it be from the Federal Reserve or would it be through traditional banking?
At the time when we went out to borrow, we would use our financial counsel and our financial advisor, and they would determine which is the best route to go. It could be either or. That's who's buying our bonds.
Okay. In the plan to borrow funds, is that would you consider that like a plan B, as a plan A would be ideally the federal government will vote on a stimulus again, or vote on a stimulus, and that would give the city 65 million. So the borrowing isn't plan A, it would be more of a plan B. Is that accurate?
That's correct. The number that we've been given from our congressman is closer to 85 million in federal disaster aid. But yes, if we didn't receive the full amount, then we would go to plan B, which would be to borrow, deficit borrow.
Okay. And when there's deficit borrowing, what are you familiar with? Like, what are the terms of repayment normally are? Is it over 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? Is there a list of different possibilities depending on the lender? Can you give me an idea just sort of on what that looks like?
I kind of generally know. I'm not 100%. We have a deficit note that you would have to pay within 2 years. If you do it through the federal, you have 3 years to pay it back. And now there is that state legislation, the draft legislation that I spoke of earlier in our conversation, where you could transfer it from a deficit note to a deficit bond, and then you would be able to pay that back over a 15-year period.
Okay. Thank you. Those are all the questions I have.
Councilmember Bowman.
Thank you, Council President. Just to kind of follow up on Councilmember Farrelletto's line of questioning with the borrowing, what would be potential negative impacts of borrowing associated with the borrowing that we're looking to do, deficit borrowing?
I think just because of the circumstances throughout the country right now, I think everybody are going to be in pretty much the same boat by this year, or middle of next year. So I don't think it'll have a huge impact on our credit rating. We are looking right now to perhaps reduce our capital borrowing for next year, just if we do this. So then our overall cost would be approximately where it is right now.
Okay, and then just one more question. Our total budget was around 508 million last year, and then we're at about 519 budgeted for this year. Where was the bulk of that additional cost? Where did that come in?
The biggest increase was in our fringe account. We have increases, annual increases in healthcare and annual increases in pension.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council members? Councilmember Wingo? Did you have a question?
Question. Maybe I was doing something over here, but while you got me up here, let me just say that I really do, Donna, appreciate the work by Halima and Jessica, and of course your staff to get this book laid out, and it's wonderfully portrait style. I don't no longer have to take the book and go side to side anymore. I can literally just read. And then let me tell you also, Donna, that this table of content is everything. It is everything to me. I mean, I no longer have to find the blue pages and put little stickies on them and go back and forth. So thank you very much for having the mind to redo this. That old system was crazy, but this is wonderful. So thank you, Donna.
All the credit goes to Jessica, Halima, and Ray. I take no credit in that at all. They did the whole thing.
Well, thank all of you for this wonderfully laid out budget. This is beautiful. Thank you very, very much. So I'm done.
Okay. Councilmember Wyatt?
I just had one, maybe one or two more questions. Donna, the 2% raise raises that the mayor is freezing, what was that number total to? The 2% that he's freezing?
It was about $250,000.
Okay.
Just over $250,000.
And the timetable for us, if this federal money comes through, is that something that we're looking at immediately or is something down the road? The federal money?
Well, we're hoping to have an answer by June.
By June?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Seeing no other council members, Commissioner, your memory of all of these items, I know you might have a few pages in front of you, but you have a great handle on the budget again and being able to answer our questions. So I really want to thank you and your team who worked through, who are working through this pandemic to even, as Councilmember Wingo just talked about, to even change the style, and people can go online and they can see the budget in real, well, not in real time, it has been posted, but they can get on, but to even listen to you and your presentation and your handle on the city finances, you are definitely essential personnel. So thank you all for what you do.
Thank you. And my staff is always open to any questions or any more information than anyone would need.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chief of Staff.
And I'll be joined by Parking Commissioner Kevin Helfer, and after that, MIS.
Council members, are you okay to keep going through this, or do we need to break after? Well, we only have how many more left, Chief of Staff?
After parking, we will have 5 more, including ourselves.
All right, council members, do you want to press through or do you need a break? Give me a thumbs up for press through. Thumbs down for stop. All right, we'll press through. Parking is on. He has been on. Kevin Helfer, welcome.
Council President, welcome. Thank you very much. Can you hear me all right?
Perfectly.
Thank you very much. Honorable members of the Common Council, thank you for having me here today. If it's all right with you, I'd like to discuss the 2 departments that I oversee, both the parking department and our traffic violations agency. So is it okay if I present on both?
Absolutely.
Thank you. In terms of my budget, I want to say that I absolutely have the resources that are necessary for my 2 departments to perform the functions that our departments are responsible for. There have been no cuts in my personnel, and as you know, that's very important for us. We are revenue departments, and a lot of this is obviously driven by personnel. On the parking side, our towing and storage is very lean. As you know, they work at Dart Street. At our auto impound, they do a tremendous job with a small amount of staff. My parking enforcement officers work every day of the week, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and do very well. And then administratively, I have the Parking Violations Bureau, interacting with the public on a daily basis, both calls, walk-ins, et cetera. They do a very nice job. On this call, I also have Danielle Morgera from our Buffalo Traffic Violations Agency. Danielle is the administrator. And as you know, the police are the enforcement agent when it comes to vehicle and traffic law and traffic violations. We are the administrative branch. And that staff is incredibly lean, dedicated, very hardworking. And, we really try very hard, both in parking and traffic, to provide public safety for our constituents and our community. And I'm here today to answer any questions that you may have.
Council members, thank you, sir. Council members? I'm missing anybody? I'm padding through. Seems like nobody has any questions for the one who gives us tickets. I don't know if that's good or bad. Thank you, Commissioner, for your presentation. We look forward to the workshops. We know that you represent a lot of departments and you have the knowledge of them.
Thank you, Council President, and we look forward to being there.
All righty. Seeing no questions, we move to MIS.
Mr. Council President, I'm not seeing MIS on. However, they were to be followed by text, and we do have Commissioner Shell available now.
All right, Commissioner, if you would, I don't see the Commissioner.
Commissioner Shell is connecting in at this moment. Should be
okay.
Any second. There he is.
There is, no, he's connecting with the audio. And if we can get MIS on after, reach out to them. And thank you to council staff for an almost seamless process. Thank you.
Looks like Commissioner Shell's got some slow internet, but he is working his way in. And we've also been joined by Daryl Springer for MIS.
All right, we'll get Shell in since he was trying to connect. All right, we'll continue to move on, and thank you, sir, for being on from MIS. If you're ready, we could start with you, and then as Commissioner Shell is getting his audio in, we'll go back to him. You have the floor for anything you'd like to present.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Perfect.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your time today. I'm here to present the MIS annual budget for the next fiscal year. We have a number of items that we are doing upgrades on. For the most part, we had to do a small rework of the budget in order to accommodate work from home and the reduction of 40% of the carbon footprint at City Hall. Outside of those small upgrades, the items that we're going to highlight in my capital, we have some blade servers that are crucial to be able to handle the extra CPU for folks who need to connect from home, as well as the item for disaster recovery. We will be put in the budget to have disaster recovery offsite to an offsite data center in case anything happens to the city. But I think you'll find that the budget does accommodate for any kind of security issues that may arise as we move forward throughout the year from having people connect from home. We have taken that into accommodation. Other than that, we will continue to provide the service level that we have been providing over the past few years. And that's it. I'd like you to consider that if there's anybody that has any questions.
Are you completed with your presentation, sir?
Yes, sorry.
All right. The security, and I know we have been talking about this of our systems, and is there any monies that's going to be needed for enhanced securities?
We put our regular annual amount that we normally put in the budget for security. We did enhance it a little bit just to accommodate any unforeseen issues that might arise with the fact that we are going to have some sort of work from home accommodation for folks that want to connect from home. So I think most of that stuff will be covered in this year's budget, in the proposed budget.
Okay, so I just want to make sure before we get to workshops, and I know, and not putting you on the spot, that just so you think about this, because when you say you think it may be, I know that the security of our systems are very, very important. We've seen what has happened to other governments when they weren't prepared for it, but reacted to it, which could be a multi-million-dollar reaction. So I want to back up and just, if we can get that information for the workshops, I think it's important to know we're being proactive and not having money there to be reactive so much, so that we don't have to stop the city, which, you know, a computer virus could do the same thing that this COVID has done, and that is to really cripple municipalities. So if you could have some more information for the workshop, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I apologize, and let me address that because I think I may have misspoke. As we've been accommodating the folks working from home over the past month and a half, I have been working in lockstep with my security officer and not pushing anything any quicker than he can come up with a solution to make sure that the city does remain safe and secure on our network. So we have been making provisions to work hand in hand with security to make sure that we're not jeopardizing the safety of our network.
Thank you, sir. Council members, any questions? Councilmember Nowakowski, I see your pin up.
Hello, Mr. Springer. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilman?
I just have a quick question. Since we are moving into more greener state where we're having more employees work from home, is there any investments in equipment or teleworking reflected in this budget?
There is actually. There are a number of hardware pieces that we're going to purchase. We've also mixed this with we're going to try to enhance the capital purchase from the capital budget in order to provide some hardware to the workforce. But there are items in this budget that will accommodate that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, because I think I had read in the one budget line, it just said in comp and software, it seemed like it had went down, but I'm assuming if it's going to look a capital request, it wouldn't be in that budget line.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Springer.
Thank you, Councilman.
Council members, anyone else? All right, I've scanned the entire page. And sir, thank you. We know your department is so important, especially now, even more important when, with people working from home even now. So thank you for the really urgent movement of your office to get a lot of people up and running from home so that the city continued to run. I don't know if people realize what your office had to do in a very little amount of time to get all of the departments up and running, including with some, 311 and other people who needed to be on, and you had to keep this network and your team secure. So please pass on from the Common Council our thanks to your team.
I appreciate those words, Council President. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, Chief of Staff.
Commissioner Shell is going to try to call in separately. We're still working with him. The next department was going to be audit and control, and we have had the comptroller, Barbara Miller-Williams, with us the entire time.
All right, good. The Honorable Barbara Miller Williams, thank you. I know you have been on. We've been able to see you. Anything for the council today?
Hello and welcome and thank you. And multitasking, working from home certainly has been an experience, but we're getting the job done. If I may I please begin with some comments? Good afternoon to each and every one of you, and thank you for inviting me to participate in today's public budget hearings. I am joined today on the call by Mr. Delano Dow, who is the Special Assistant to the Comptroller, as well as Bill Ferguson, the Accounting Division, and Greg Samansky, who is our Debt Management Officer. The Department of Audit and Control continues to partner with all branches of city government. We partner with citizens, taxpayers, and all financial entities related to protecting, reporting, and strengthening the city's finances. We've offered in-house and public training sessions pertinent to financial matters for all those that are interested, and will continue to communicate with each and every one of you, as well as the public, about the fiscal health and well-being of our city via our website, press releases, Open Data Buffalo, as well as the submission of pertinent financial documents, which will be filed and continue to be filed with the Common Council. Those documents consist of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, the PAFR, etc. As you all know, our department consists of 3 divisions as follows. We have the Division of Audit, which has oversight of payroll, check processing, vendor invoices, and purchase orders. And they also review all contracts to include internal reports as needed. We're continuing to advance the new payroll system, which is known as ExecuTime, and we're winding down with that project with hope, and we anticipate to have the Buffalo Police Department and the Department of Public Works on board, which will result in 100% participation. Secondly, the Division of Accounting, which maintains the general ledger, is also a part of the Department of Audit and Control. It is responsible for all of our annual financial statements. And we're going to continue to work to file all applicable legal reports. We're going to reconcile all the bank statements for the city, the Buffalo Municipal Water Finance Authority, and the Buffalo Water Board, among numerous other entities. Thirdly, we have a division of investment and debt management. Now that division maintains the banking relationships. We ensure compliance with the city charter, the code, and external governance. We maximize the return on our investments, and we continue to improve the preparation of the cash flow analysis. Now, in reference to current actions, please allow me an opportunity to share the following. Several weeks ago, our department submitted the March 2020 cash flow statement. It reflected an ending balance of $18 million. The April cash flow statement will be filed with the Common Council no later than May 15th. Both of these documents are public documents, and we will certainly discuss them further with the Common Council, whether it's through the budget proceedings and or during the finance committees. We sold the bond anticipation note of approximately $34 million. It was issued on April 28th. Those funds were designated to close out last year's ban, and we're going to use some of those funds for upcoming capital budget projects. We'll continue to maintain strong bond ratings with the major agencies, and upon receipt of the third quarter gap report from the administration, we're going to review it, and we will be submitting our written response to the council, and we'll also place our response on our website. In reference to the revenues and expenditures in the current budget, as of 4/22/20, there was a $35 million deficit. However, please keep in mind that we do have numerous weeks of revenues and expenses that will need to be recorded in this fiscal 2020 year. So even though on April 22nd, we had to recognize that there was a deficit, but there are also additional revenues that will come and go prior to the end of this fiscal year. In closing, the department's net projected costs are $3,871,000, which reflects the cost for, this is our Department of Audit and Control department. It reflects the cost for positions, staff training, supplies, and outside auditing services. In addition, we're closely monitoring our department's budget. And in reference to the anticipated question from Councilmember Wyatt, we are prepared to make necessary conservative adjustments in a fiscally responsible manner if required to adjust our department's budget. And last but not least, we have received the mayor's recommended budget, as each and every one of you have. And we're in the process of reviewing that budget, and I will be submitting my response. At this time, I'd just like to take a moment and thank all of the essential as well as the non-essential employees, and in particular to those that work within the Department of Audit and Control. I am always biased when I say they are the best workers within the city of Buffalo, but I'm sure each and every one of you would echo the same sentiments with your staff and the employees throughout the city of Buffalo. I thank my staff for making the necessary adjustments and for their commitment during these difficult times. Finally, I look forward to sitting down and working with each and every one of you, including the administration, the citizens and taxpayers, as we work hard to put together and move forward with a budget that is conservatively and fiscally responsible for the city of Buffalo. I thank each and every one of you council members for your service. And as we conclude and we move forward, I just want to keep reminding everyone, please stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak and to address your honorable body. And myself and my staff, we are open to answer any questions and or concerns that you may have at this time.
Thank you, Controller. Council members? Any questions for our Controller? We look forward to, I'm sorry, Councilmember Noakowski?
Yeah, just a quick note, but the first I do want to say is, Madam Controller, thank you to you and your staff. As a former council member, I know you know there's no greater call from a block club saying we got the check. So thank you.
Without a doubt. I certainly can appreciate that. You're welcome.
And I just have a quick question for Mr. Zemansky. On page 12 of the budget, so I'm just gonna get my notes. There's an anticipation note for $34 million. What is that?
Hi, this is Greg Szymanski, an investment and debt officer for the city. So that is the recent note issue that we just that Barbara referenced. The $34 million that was for the repayment of last year's $20 million bond anticipation note and this year's capital project needs.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Any other council member? Councilmember Bowman.
Thank you, Council President. Madam Comptroller, just a quick question. I asked Commissioner Estrich this as well about the deficit borrowing. In your opinion, do you think it could have negative impacts and what's your thought on that if we get to that point? I know we're all hopeful that this federal funding comes through, and that's certainly my hope as well. But if we were in the situation of moving towards deficit borrowing, which it's likely, what's your opinion on that? And that's really my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Recognizing that we're chartering on waters that are unforeseen, we don't know what's going to happen. And this situation that we're dealing with financially is something that not only the city of Buffalo, but just about every city, every municipality across the country is dealing with the same matter. I do not see it as a negative. Everyone realizes that in order to provide critical services, in order to ensure that the city maintains the momentum and moves forward, we are going to have to do something a little differently. I don't think that going out and being creative and finding other ways to bring funds into the budget is going to be a negative. Rest assured, I'm going to be watching very closely. With any type of borrowing, I'm going to look at it under a microscope to make sure, number one, do we truly need to do that borrowing? Can we afford to pay it back when it's time to be paid back? And what right now, there's so much legislation, and as a former legislator, I can attest to and share with you that we don't know where the legislation is going. It may go up, it may go down, but we can only hope that the legislation goes up, and it is something that will be beneficial for not only the city of Buffalo, but other municipalities across New York State and the country that might need it. So I do not see it as a negative at this point in time, but you trust and believe when I say that I'm going to be closely monitoring all borrowing actions and seriously closely look at what effect it has on our current budget and future budgets as well.
Any other questions, council members? Councilmember Rivera? You're still on mute, sir.
Can you hear me now? Controller Barbara Miller Williams, I'm glad to hear you say that you are going to be paying close attention to the borrowing and everything that's going on. I ask that you also assess all the risks involved so you can inform this common council or raise a flag if it needs to be raised with regards to deficit funding, the risk of not receiving the money that we all would like to receive. There's some risk involved here, and I'd like to seek an assessment on those risks, especially coming from your office. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is a reasonable request, Councilmember Rivera. We will certainly make that a priority, and we will address your concerns, and we'll make sure that the response to your concerns are made available to each and every council member, as well as the administration.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, council member. Hearing or seeing no other hands, thank you for what you do in keeping us informed. Your staff has been outstanding in being, attentive to the questions, and I mean all of them who we interact with, not just one, but I want to thank you for that, for making them available, and for the facts. The numbers don't lie, and so I appreciate that and the integrity of our process and of our separate governments, our separate arms of the same government. So important that we have that accurate information. So thank you, Controller.
You're all very welcome. Thank you.
Chief of Staff.
Council President, we're still having trouble getting Commissioner Shell. He was actually early. He was trying to get in, but there are still just some technical difficulties that are holding him up. If it's all right, the next and last department after that was going to be the council itself. And of course, Tiana and myself are here.
All right. The question that I have is, can he call in?
He's actually trying that too, but both myself and the mayor's staff, we can't seem to get through right now. We're not sure what's going on at his location.
So is our plan to hear him tomorrow?
If need be, if we can't get him in the next 5 minutes of going over the council itself, then I would suggest that would be the plan for him.
All right, before I go to Ms. Marks, is it possible for someone to call him?
I just called. I can try again while we do this.
Have somebody call him and conference call him in. We might not see him, but that way, if he has a presentation, we can hear him.
We can try that. Yes, sir.
I have the city clerk on somewhere. There she is. City clerk, any items of your presentation? Do you have a presentation?
Sure. Thank you. I'm Tiana Marks, the city clerk for the city of Buffalo. I would first like to thank the council for this opportunity. I would like to applaud my department as well on their hard work and dedication during this unprecedented times with COVID-19. Just to let the council know and the city know, no one has been without a birth, death, or marriage certificate, as well as couples have been able to receive a marriage license. I know there was some confusion with certain towns and villages. The state actually reached out to me and they were very proud that we were already ahead of the curve with this, already still constantly issuing marriage licenses. At this time, it is a process, and it's basically a marriage application that is online and available to the public. And once we process it, we kind of have a curbside assistant program where they come and actually pick up the actual marriage license, so that it has been done. To speak upon our budget, it is very conservative. Honestly, before COVID-19, we already kind of looked at it with cost savings as well as a decrease in certain services that we may not maximize or need at this time. We decreased our supplies and computer and software line. We plan to capitalize in our current fiscal year in those services as far as the computer and software. One of the things that I know last year, speaking with the council, you guys had concerns as far as with technology and cameras. So within this current fiscal year that we are in, we're looking to make those adjustments. As you know, unfortunately, during this time, it's hard for us to take every resident of the city of Buffalo, their birth certificates or their death certificates home. So during this COVID, it made us experience that we need to become a little more electronically where we're able to meet those needs. And so we're looking to actually do that within this current fiscal year. And I think next year you'll definitely see a savings within a clerk's office in our budget.
Thank you. Council members, any questions? The clerk's office has definitely been being run during this outbreak, and a lot of what we worked on as a team. As she said, people called in from throughout the state to figure out how Buffalo was doing it. I want to commend you and your deputies and your entire team for what you have done for the people of the city of Buffalo. Some said it couldn't be done, that people wouldn't be able to get married, that the undertakers were going to have a hard time getting the death certificate and burial certificates. And we may have had a few bumps in the road to figure it out in the beginning, but through your leadership, we were able to work those out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Council President, if I may.
Address Ms. Marks.
No, from my office on the same budget lines.
No, let me make sure that the council members don't have anything for her, and then I'll come to your office. Council members, anything for the clerk? All right, hearing none. Now you're on, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. I just wanted to take a note to say that I'm extremely proud of the members of the central office and staff that have helped in implementing strategies that have allowed this continuity of operations to go on, contributing to even being able to have these meetings as we're doing now, increasing transparency, maintaining the level that we were before we left. But honestly, I even believe that things have even gotten better, and sort of a strange silver lining of this, that our processes are very clear, that people have means to participate. And this is something that I would stress and urge that the council members and your continued leadership, that we focus on and invest on for the future, that we can maintain this and continue this direction that we've been going in. And in addition, that I'm very proud that with the current budget of fiscal 20 and with what remains for or going forward for fiscal 21, we have done some strategic restructuring of the staff in the central office. And I'm happy to report that has resulted in a lot of increased efficiencies and opportunities for professional development, for which the only things that I would say are key for our budget in the central office would be continued investments in professional development opportunities and office management software that continues to allow this sort of work from home and decentralized communications that we're doing now. Thank you.
Totally agree. And I think that both of your offices working together. And as a matter of fact, as I reviewed the graphic behind my head, which is incorrect because it would have taken us back last year. So if anybody sees the graphic, I don't blame it on the chief of staff. It's me doing my own little work. We'll change that. But thank you both for working together so hard to make this happen. And I agree with you, sir, that it is a different normal, but I don't think it's a normal that we should stop as far as, really continuing to move this transparency forward through social media for the many people who have said, I've never watched a council meeting, I've never watched a committee meeting, who are now watching. And I think that that's so important and able to participate.
Council. Oh, you went back on mute.
Okay. I just want to echo Council President. I just want to commend the clerk's office and the chief of staff and central staff they've done a phenomenal job under crisis situation. I can't say enough about how they have made things happen. We had a few glimpses, but they have done a terrific job. And I think that shows you what type of team we have when you go through crisis and they're able to adapt and maneuver and still achieve. That speaks volumes. So I congratulate you and thank you even making this happen. This is just unprecedented, and it pretty much went on without a hitch. So again, thank you to the central staff. You and Jim are a great tandem. We are fortunate to have you, and Tiana, your leadership has really been something that has made us all proud. Thank you all.
Thank you, council member. And I really appreciate you calling them out as well, because there have been several rising stars that were great before this happened, but they took this opportunity to really push it to the next level and have been absolutely shining. And definitely among them on the call, Taisha St. Jean, who has helped tremendously in turning around our communication strategy, Nina Zeski, and then definitely Deputy Chief of Staff Jim Montour, who has been a tremendous help, having promoted him into that position to help do all of these restructuring things for management.
All righty.
President?
I'm sorry. Yes, sir. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to echo the comments from my colleagues to the clerk's office, for being able to stay open and to do all the work that they're doing, during it's a scary process for people that actually have to deal, even if it's just the letter carriers and the letters and things like that. I have thanked Malcolm and Jim for all the work that they've done, and they've constantly told me that it's not them, that it's the rest of the staffers. So I do want to state that at this moment as well, that, we have a fine staff in the central staff, and they've been able to do this, and people that are technologically unsavvy like me are pretty much able to do this reasonably well. One thing that I'm going to share, once again, going back to the early 2000s when we went through the crisis that gave us the control board, the one thing I think that we're going to have to remember is that the council has to lead by example. And I guess there's a question that we've asked all the other departments, but what about for us? And these are the two departments that we as council members control. I mean, we can do whatever we want pretty much to them, legally speaking. But what is our contingency plan? If we have expectations from everybody else, we have to make sure that we have them on ourselves as well. And is there a contingency plan currently? I'm not asking for it to be broadcast publicly or anything at this point, but please remember that we have to start with ourselves. And if that $80 million does not come through from the federal government, you're talking about roughly a 16% cut that you would have to make clear across the board. We would have to start, before we start pointing fingers everywhere else, we'd have to take a look at our bodies, and take a look at clerk and the council, and make some very, very difficult and some very, very tough decisions. And in order to, if we do that, then we can, I think that we can show true leadership like we did in the past, and by leading by example, hurting ourselves and making those very, very difficult cuts. Now, that being said, I hope that we don't get to that point. I hope that, the government comes out, that there's a little bit of more money found here and there, whatever, and that things end up being a little bit better. But I'm somewhat of a pessimist by nature, and I am a bit worried about that. And I think that we ought to very, very seriously be taking a look at what we will do and what we will have to do if we have to make those draconian cuts, because we can't just force everybody else. We have to take a look at ourselves. And I would like to see a budget this year for the council and the clerk's office that roughly stays the same and doesn't add anything to it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And as in the past, when we've had rough budgets, and especially under this leadership, we have taken cuts. We have looked for cuts, and I don't see any reason that we would not do that again. And I want to be clear about that. I said it earlier. My mind didn't change in the last hour, and we are prepared to do whatever we would have to do also. Council members, did we get the commissioner on or anything else, council members? I'm sorry. Did we get the commissioner on?
Yes, it looks like we have been joined by Commissioner Shell. Commissioner Shell, can you hear us?
Yes, I apologize. I was putting the kids to bed. I was expecting a later phone call. I apologize.
Not a problem. Glad to have you. And you have the floor, sir, for any comments.
Well, I just wanted to just start off by saying, thank you for this opportunity. As you know, our office serves a very important function for the city, both in, the raising of the property taxes through the assessments, but also the collection of property taxes. And then most importantly, administration of exemptions throughout the city for, various parties. We put together a good budget this year, a lean budget, and we believe that what we have is sufficient to get us through any hard times. And with that, I'll leave the floor to you.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for getting on the call. Council members, any questions for the commissioner? Councilmember Wyatt.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. With the pandemic that has hit us, I know that we've made arrangements where taxpayers would be able to make arrangements. Have we had any indication of what that number may look like? Or have you got something so far that people have asked for those type of arrangements?
As far as arrangements in lieu of taxes?
Yeah.
No, there's no data right now to support anything that we would worry about. Obviously, our tax year, we will begin collection as well into July. We do it in two segments. A lot of what you've seen is early on, January through due dates of March. So as of right now, we're not seeing any data that would suggest that we would run into that. But, obviously, anytime there's a scenario where, people fall behind or, have trouble meeting their tax needs, my office historically has always been there to not only orchestrate payment plans, but, make sure they're in the proper exemptions, those types of things.
Okay. Commissioner, is the STAR exemption department under you?
No, sir. It's under New York State.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, council members? Seeing no hands go up, unless I missed one. Commissioner, thanks. And again, sorry for interrupting. And
yeah, I apologize to waste your time.
We're a little ahead of schedule. We look forward to talking to you again in the workshops after we've had some more time to study the budget. And I know, again, all of the commissioners have been doing such a good job to really deliver for the citizens of the city of Buffalo, including your office. And thank you. And thank you for always keeping us informed and up to date on the numbers and where we are. We look forward to seeing you in the workshops.
I appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too. Chief of Staff?
I've received no confirmation from labor unions. They would be the only department or organization rather to review next. After that, the list is done.
All right, but we did send out invites to them?
Yes, sir, we did.
All right. Can you please give the schedule for the public again, so that they are able to participate in the hearings or be able to watch?
Yes, sir. So tomorrow the council will convene again at 10 a.m. to have a hearing reviewing the Board of Education budget. After that, there will be a public hearing that the public can participate directly in, to be held at 11:30 a.m. Both will be broadcast here on this page on Facebook. If you, as a member of the public, would like to participate, you can send your comments in advance by email to councilstaff@city-buffalo.com, or you may call 851-5105 or you can comment on this or tomorrow's video live, and staff will read in relevant comments to the budget at that time.
Thank you. Council members or staff, are we missing anything before we move to recess? I've been using the little trick that you all told us with the space bar, but when the chat comes up, it won't work. So that's where I'm getting delayed. All right, hearing nothing else. It is being moved by, is Councilmember Rivera on? I'm trying to make sure. Oh, there he is. Moved by Councilmember Rivera, second by Councilmember Bowman, that we recess until May 6, 2020 at 10 a.m. I'm sorry, and seconded by, who did I give the second to? Councilmember Bowman. We are in recess until tomorrow morning. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.